And here we go. Levis goes over the middle to Hopkins. The pitch back. The second pitch, live football. Zeros on the clock, and it is over here in Nashville. The Indianapolis Colts, on the back of Joe Flacco and Shane Steichen's offense, shorthanded, no Jonathan Taylor, come to Nashville and win it 20-17, your final.
Oh, it was bad. Oh, it was bad. He said no Jonathan Taylor, not just no Jonathan Taylor, no DeForest Buckner, no starting quarterback, the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL. Bad, bad, bad. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live today from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Ian, it was bad.
It was bad, yeah.
It was bad. And I said on Friday, the 2 o'clock segment on Friday, the 2 o'clock segment was, don't lose to Indianapolis. The Indianapolis was in terrible shape entering yesterday's game. Tons of injuries. Again, their best offensive player out. Their best defensive player out. Their defense, worst in the NFL. Their rushing defense, 31st. Their passing defense entering yesterday, 29th. They had just gone on the road and lost to Jacksonville, who, I don't know if you guys saw the London game yesterday, might be as bad as you. They just went on the road, lost to Jacksonville. They gave up 380 passing yards to Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence completed 82% of his passes against the Indianapolis Colts last week, and that same defense you got to play this week. And I said, don't lose, or else we'll have to have the hard conversations. Let me just say this. The debate going on around town, should the Titans bench Will Levis? Should the Titans give up on Levis? Should the Titans go with Mason Rudolph? Those aren't the hard questions. In fact, I've said this many times. I don't even care what they do as far as the quarterback is concerned. He sucks. But the problems, again, they lie deeper than just who the quarterback is. It starts at the very, very top of this organization. And that's where the hard questions have to be. For instance, what about Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker? Should they continue to run this organization when they've done nothing in 2 years except tear down a football team that was a fumble, interception, incomplete pass, video review away from making the playoffs? That team was they had problems, okay, in 2022. Aaron Brewer stunk, and the right tackle was bad, and the left tackle was worse, and the protection was awful, and they had problems. They traded away A.J. Brown. They had problems. But that team was a skosh away from making the playoffs. And since the Titans have decided that wasn't good enough, Chad Brinker and Rand Carthon have torn this team down. Goodbye, Kevin Byard. We'll be better without him. Goodbye, Ryan Tannehill. Goodbye, Derrick Henry. Goodbye, all those guys. Hello, Andre Dillard. $4 million for Aaron Brewer. Let's go get Arden Key to help the pass rush. Let's not go get a right tackle this offseason. They've done nothing in 2 years. So this is the hard question, right? Because the trade deadline is 22 days away. And I don't know how you can trust the guys that in 2 years have, again, taken you from just the skosh away from the playoffs to worst team in the NFL. You're the worst team in the league. I'm sorry. You have lost to, and I know, well, we've only lost these one-score games. You have lost to a rookie quarterback making his first career start, 3 backup quarterbacks, or I should say you've played because you did beat Tyler Huntley, a rookie quarterback making his first career start, 3 backup quarterbacks, and a team that has already fired its head coach. That's who you've lost to. So again, the trade deadline is 22 days away. There is no need to keep DeAndre Hopkins on this team. There is no need, unless you're going to re-sign him, to keep Dylan Radunz on the team. There is no need to keep Arden Key on the team. And none of these guys are going to get you anything good in return. It's all going to be 5th, 6th, 7th round picks, but that's fine. Again, it does you no good. So do you let them do it? Do you let them dismantle this team? You let them spend all that money in free agency to go get a receiver that doesn't do anything or a corner that couldn't cover Alec Pierce. So do you let that continue to happen? That's the hard question. Again, I mean, she fired John Robinson when there was no trade deadline left. There was no any GM type moves to make the rest of the year, but she fired him anyways because she had put her foot down and she decided right then and there. She had decided. That was it. Well, I mean, there's a trade deadline to go. You want to put these guys in charge of continuing to make you worse? They were given the task to make you better this offseason. They didn't do it. Last year's Titan team is better than this year's Titan team. Sorry. Here's another hard question for you. Should Brian Callahan be a one-and-done coach at the end of the year? Again, it's never a good look to fire a coach after 1 year. And I wouldn't fire Brian Callahan in the middle of the season, but I do think there's got to be a discussion here that if we're talking about the real problem with the organization, which starts with the owner, we've talked about it. She's an absentee owner. She's here sometimes. She's not here other times. She has no idea what's going on in the building. She has no experienced football people in football positions. So that's the root of the problem. And then the questions are, so where do you go from here? And if you've realized that Brian Callahan, that Ran Carthon and Chad Brinker are just a bunch of snake oil salesmen that don't actually improve your football club, well, that means you're going to have to go get a new hierarchy. And if you get a new hierarchy, you're probably going to have to get a new coach. Like, I'm sorry, it is what it is. So these are the hard questions that have to be asked. And if you guys want to say, no, Jared, this is not Chad Brinker's fault. This is not Ran Carthon's fault. This is not Brian Callahan's fault. That's fine. You're entitled to that opinion. And you can go on about your business and let them pick the next quarterback and let them screw that up too, the same way they screwed up this offseason. And you'll continue to lose. Don't think that I enjoy bringing this up after week 5. I'd like to talk about the game. And, what we used to do when the Titans used to win around here. Oh, man, this guy made a great play. Oh, man, that was a bad call right there by the refs. Oh, man, this was a... But again, what difference does it make? You just lost to the worst. You scored 17 points on the worst defense in the NFL. You suck. Like, we can hash out what about yesterday's game indicates that you suck, but there's no question as to whether or not you suck. And this is not a one-man problem. This is not just a Will Levis says enough. No. Jeffrey Simmons is making $23.5 million. Could you please hit the quarterback? Tavondre Sweat was picked 38th. No pressures, no sacks, no quarterback hits. L'Jarius Needs paid $19 million. Can you cover the Colts receivers and not get a penalty? I mean, I hate to say it, but these are questions that have to be asked. When you spent the entire offseason gaslighting the fan base about how good this team was going to be, every podcast interview, every sit down, every press conference, every practice, offense would screw up and they'd say, well, Denard's defense is really, really good. That's why Will Levis threw the ball in the lake. And maybe they gaslit themselves because in that moment on March 27th, it made them feel better about themselves. It made Amy feel better about herself to hear her GM say, we're going to compete this year, to hear her head coach say, we got a quarterback. But it's not true. The coach is a nice guy. I really like Brian Callahan. I do. He is a nice guy. But this is the NFL, and it doesn't matter if you're nice. Bill Belichick wasn't nice, and I take his results. In fact, the results you're getting right now are the results that Bill Belichick got at the end of his tenure in New England. The kind of results you have to get to be the greatest coach of all time and still get fired. And that's what you're doing now. Since you fired John Robinson that Tuesday in December, you are 7-20. Carolina, the gold standard for pitiful in the NFL, led by bad ownership, 6-22. You have one more win than the Carolina Panthers over that stretch. If the Titans hadn't just completely overhauled the franchise 10 months ago, if Brian Callahan, for instance, were in year 3, the Titans would be staring down a cleaning of the house. It wouldn't even really be discussed. Everybody would just assume, yeah, at the end of the year, we're cleaning house, the same way Washington did this past year. But the Commanders, with a new GM, a new coach, a new quarterback, all in tow, after putting up a valiant effort yesterday against a real contender, Baltimore, also changed the most important part of the organization. Owner. Amy has to take a backseat here. Amy has to hire football people who know football. Not football people who were 4th in command somewhere else, 5th in command, never called plays, no. Real football people. Not people who use big words like analytics to make you feel smart. In fact, I want to introduce another buzzword. Because the buzzword the Titans loved so much this offseason was collaboration. That was their buzzword. Collaboration. Hunting together is not the same as hunting at the same time. Collaboration. Brinker and Carthon and Callahan and Johnny and Jimmy and Stevie and Scotty. That's what she demanded. Collaboration. That was the buzzword. I got a new one. Competence. Competence. That's the word we need because the Titans don't have it. Right now, they don't have a competent NFL quarterback. They don't have a competent NFL head coach. They do not have a competent general manager. They do not have a competent president of football operations, and they do not have a competent owner. I hate to say it, but you are what your record says you are in this league. And again, you are right there with Carolina. You are 1-4 against 3 backup quarterbacks, 1 rookie in his first game ever, and a team who has already fired its coach and demoted its offensive play caller. That is terrible. That's what it is. Because yesterday's loss wasn't just about one game. It wasn't about one play call. It wasn't about one bad decision. It wasn't about one bad, just like losing to Green Bay with Malik Willis at quarterback. Wasn't about having a bad day at the office. It wasn't about having a bad game plan. It wasn't about having a bad mindset. It wasn't about not being positive enough. It was that you suck. Top to bottom, you suck. It's not one guy's fault. Just like last season. Well, we got to turn the page on Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, and we got to move on, and you think it was Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill's fault you suck so bad? Not their fault now. It's about organizational incompetence. And until you're ready to have discussions about it, and I already see the YouTube chat on the side saying things like, here goes Jared. He's crazy. Until you're willing to have these conversations, until you're willing to actually ask hard questions of your franchise, until you're willing to discuss the root of the problem, Is it the GM? Is it the president? Is it the coach? Is it the collaboration? Is it the owner? Until you're ready to do that, you're not going to get any better. And so it doesn't matter what backup quarterback you play, what terrible head coach comes in here, it doesn't matter. You're going to lose. Just like Carolina, whose owner can't get his head out of his own ass, will continue to lose. Have you noticed, by the way, don't think it was Baker Mayfield's fault in Carolina. I think he's doing okay. Don't think it was Sam Darnold's fault in Carolina. I think he's also doing okay. So is it Bryce Young's fault? Is it all the coaches they fired their fault? No. It's the top. That's the problem with your team. You scored 17 points with an offensive head coach against the 32nd ranked NFL defense without their best player. I mean, come on now. I mean, it does not get worse than yesterday. And until you're ready to admit it, until you're ready to talk about it, nothing's going to change. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025. And we will get to your phones today. But a lot of people want to talk about the quarterback. I get it. I got one thought on it. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025 on a Titans Monday. It's 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
For Will, do you still remain committed to him?
I do. Yeah, outside of that turnover, I thought he did a nice job with the game. I thought we need to make help him. We need more help around him. Guys need to make more plays for him when he puts the ball in certain spots, and I think we just didn't do a good enough job of that today.
That was Brian Callahan yesterday after the game saying he is still committed to Will Levis. And I just have a quick thought when it comes to the quarterback, because I know everybody wants to talk about replacing the quarterback. Is the team out on Levis? Can you believe what Callahan said about Levis? You know, what if you went to Rudolph? Well, what good would that do? Let me say that. Talk of replacing the quarterback at this point is below my pay grade. I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm interested in what it will take to actually make the Titans good. That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about competing. Not, do you think if we had Mason Rudolph in at quarterback, we would beat these horrible teams with their backup quarterbacks or terrible coaches? I'm not worried about it. I don't care about that. Because, again, I'm worried about what it will take to make the Titans good. A good, competitive football team. It's not that long ago that we used to have discussions around here about, are you as good as Kansas City, Buffalo, Cincinnati, and Baltimore? It wasn't that long ago. In fact, it feels like 25 minutes ago. You went on the road to Green Bay, beat them, came back here and lost by 4 points to the Bengals, the defending AFC champions. And then the wheels fell off. And you've been the Carolina Panthers ever since then. I'm sorry. Like, I'm worried about what it takes to actually win important games. I mean, that Colts team, yes, the Colts are horrible. They allowed a touchdown on a surrender draw on 3rd and 19. They're awful. And so the Titans went all in on Will Levis this offseason. I would not have done that. But then again, I'm not going to shame them for that because I understand it. Again, that's not what I would have done, but I get it. That's okay. But again, the big picture issues with the football team, the reason why you're terrible is not because of one guy. It's not. It's because ownership decided to take over in the middle of 2022, and every subsequent move they've made has been a step backwards. Again, and I like Brian Callahan. I really do like Brian Callahan. I'm serious about it. I think he's a really good man. But he's not a better coach than Mike Vrabel. At least not right now. That's a step back. Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, they've been here for 2 years. Is there any young player on this football team that you can build an identity around? And you can't build an identity around a guard. Is there any young player on the team you can build an identity around? So the issues aren't with Will Levis. Will Levis is terrible. He's terrible, and honestly, I hate to say this, he's also probably kind of stupid. Like, I'm just going to be real with you guys. I mean, it's like every game he gets dumber, and I don't necessarily mean by the things he does on the field or the things he does on the field are dumb, but it's like after the game sitting there saying, yeah, that interception I threw, my shoulder wasn't 100%. Like, okay, then go sit your ass on the bench if you're not healthy enough to play. Just shut up. So, whatever. So if you want to waste my time and you want to waste your time, you're talking about, oh my God, what should we do at quarterback, Jared? Well, the answer is the guy you're starting right now is not the answer, and the guy who's the backup is not the answer. And so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Would it have been a good thing if you had won yesterday? In all seriousness, given the state of the franchise, what are we doing here? So I don't even care about the quarterback. Like, I've made up my mind on the quarterback. I think they've probably made up their mind on the quarterback too. They just don't have a backup option because they thought he was a franchise quarterback. I said this at the end of last year. In fact, I didn't say it at the end of last year. Ian, I think I said this around Thanksgiving. I said, if I own the team, they went to Jacksonville in November of last year and got their hats handed to them. And I said, if I own the team, it was a 5:00 segment that day. I said, if I own the team, at the end of the year, I'd clean house. Goodbye Rand, goodbye Vrabel, and I'd go get an experienced general manager and I'd go let him hire his coach. And I wouldn't even tell them in the interview process, like, hey, we drafted a quarterback in the second round. I really believe in him. I want him to be the guy. I wouldn't even do that. I would not have done that. I would have said, tell me what you think of Will Levis. And if you don't think you can win with Will Levis, that's okay. We'll go get another quarterback. And I'll bite the bullet the same way I bite the bullet when it comes to firing a first-year general manager. And that was because I felt like the Titans needed to significantly alter course, not this on-the-fly stuff they've been doing. And as soon as I said it, again, all I said was clean house. They brought Rand Carthon in to work with Vrabel. It was clear that wasn't going to work. So are you going to promote him for sucking? Which is, I guess, I think they kind of demoted him. But I guess I don't know. But you're going to promote him for sucking? Way to go, guys. That'll work. But as soon as I said it, and this was so predictable, it was, Jared's a racist because he wants to fire the general manager after 1 year. Sure. Right. Okay. No. Jared knew ahead of time that when it came to the Titans and it came to that shotgun marriage between Vrabel and Carthon, we're going to play nice in the sandbox, that's only going to work if they win right away. If you win right away, it's, oh, man, Mike's doing a great job coaching. We just asked Mike what players he wants. Mike goes out and gets a – Mike's a great – no. They're going out and getting the best. We love each other. Yes, we're the best. But if it doesn't work, there's going to be internal blame and strife. And we were told this time last year, we were told that's not true. You're making it up. That's not true. They love each other. Right. This organization needs a reset. I'm sorry. And it goes beyond quarterback. It goes to the top. So when you guys want to talk about, we got to change a quarterback, and what about Rudolph, and what about, again, that's below my pay grade. That is an insignificant problem to me. The bigger problem is if you change the quarterback, that means you're going looking for a new quarterback. And do you want the same people looking for the new quarterback that gaslit the entire fan base? Maybe to sell PSLs, maybe because they believed it, because they're not great football people. I don't know. But do you trust them to go looking for it? Do you trust the coach that came in here and said, I can fix Will Levis? Do you trust him to go find you and fix the next quarterback? Those are the real questions. Should they replace Levis? Who cares? He sucks. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. I do promise calls, and so we'll hit them next. 615-737-1025 on a Titans Monday. It's Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the end.
this is a defense. They get Kenny Moore back, so he's out there, but a defense that has given up big passing numbers to wide receivers outside the numbers this season.
Can Levis and company take advantage of some of that? Levis here, going to take a shot, throws into a crowd, and it is picked. Julian Blackmon with a snatch for Indianapolis. Levis just throwing it up, and Blackmon making the easy pick.
Well, Levis, watch Levis at the top of his drop and how long he's staring right here. And then now he's looking here, but now look how long he pats it. He pats it and he pats it and he pats it. That's an eternity. So Blackmon playing center field, he knows as soon as Levis looks that way, if he doesn't launch it and get rid of it, he gives Blackmon too much time to get a head start and break on that pass. A critical error trying to get the ball outside, but he gave him way too much.
He sucks. I mean, he threw that ball up there like that. I mean, he telegraphed it. He just lofted it up. Ridley had to stop himself, kind of look up at the ball like a center fielder, like a can of corn. And Julian Blackmon made what was a pretty easy play. I mean, he dropped an easy interception in his hands earlier in the game, but he made the play, got both feet in, and then was able to get a hand in there, which I actually thought was pretty impressive. So, again, the whole, should they bench Levis, Jared? I mean, you're terrible with him, and you're probably the worst team in the league with him at quarterback. He's throwing for 95 yards. If you make Mason Rudolph the quarterback, you're probably, 6-11 at the end of the year, and you're picking 4th or 6th. Or whoop-de-freaking-do. You think you win with Mason Rudolph at quarterback next week in Buffalo? So I didn't really care about that. But there's a couple things with Will Levis that I heard, and I rolled my eyes. The first was him saying that he wasn't 100% on that interception throw. It's like, well, if you're not 100%, then just go sit down, and we'll put somebody else in there. But here's the one thing that really, really got up my craw. And if I was on that team, this would get up my craw too, which is how Will Levis basically blames the team for the lack of success. And I understand, it's a team game. We win as a team and we lose as a team. And here was Will Levis just kind of first up after the game yesterday.
I mean, that's the NFL. That's how it's going to be. It's just about giving your team a chance to win in the last 5% of the game. And we've had 3 of those games and we haven't won any of them. So we got to start figuring out how to score some points in the fourth quarter. And it starts with all of us. We can't point any fingers, and we got to just look inside and what we can do better to put ourselves in a better position. But we can't have the performances we've had in the fourth quarter if we expect to be, a playoff football team. So
we need to do this, and we need to do that, and we need to. You need to throw for more than 95 yards. How about taking responsibility? I let my team down. I have to make that throw. I have to get the ball to Calvin Ridley. I have to, but he can't do it because he's trying to tell himself that he doesn't suck. He sucks. But that's kind of my biggest bone to pick with Levis is, hey, we got to make the plays to win the game in the end, and we got to this and we got to that. Brother, you threw for 4 yards per attempt. 7 is the line of demarcation, whether or not you're any good. Derrick Henry has more rushing yards this year than Will Levis has passing yards. He blows. It's like time to admit it, Will. Time to say, hey, I got to start playing better. I got to start playing better. It is what it is. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com on a Titans Monday. Michael has been waiting very patiently. He's going to kick us off at 615-737-1025. Michael, go ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Right before I get to my point, I'd like to say whatever CBS is compensating Spero Dedes and Adam Archuleta, it needs to be about double for how many Titans games they've had to call over the last couple of years. No one outside this media broadcast should be forced to watch as much Titans football as they've had over the last 2 years since John Robinson got fired. But I'm 100% in agreement with you about the whole clean slate at this point. Levis, Callahan, Rand, they all need to go. And unfortunately, I don't trust Amy enough at this point to be able to do that without doing, Callahan didn't draft Levis or something. Rand drafted Levis. Vrabel drafted him. So we're going to keep Callahan, but we're going to get rid of the other 2 guys. I just don't trust her to be able to really look at herself and say, I need to get rid of everybody and start this thing over?
Well, I don't think she's going to do that because I think that she's going to then be the one that has to be front and center on this. Thank you for your call, Michael. She's going to, if Amy were to come out, see, and again, this is what leadership is. If Amy were to come out at the end of the year on Black Monday and fire everybody, Brinker, Rand, Callahan, everybody. If she were to do that, that would require her to hold a press conference. She ain't going to do that. If she were to do that, there would be people that said she didn't give it enough time. I mean, I got somebody in the media who would never go on record with their criticisms of the current administration, but they've already said, oh, yeah, if they did that, there would be a story at NFL on NFL Network. Tom Pelissero would have it about how the Titans did Rand Carthon wrong. How the Titans did Brian Callahan wrong. That organization can never get it right. The thing that's crazy is I don't think most people in America would pay attention or would care. Like, I truly believe that more people care about Vrabel being fired because Vrabel was a star. Vrabel was a TV star. These guys, I mean, they're nobodies in the NFL. But I cannot imagine Amy having the stones to get up in front of everybody to say, I blew it. Because remember, every time she fires somebody, she doesn't do the talking about it. Mike Mularkey got fired? No, wait a minute. Ken Wisenhunt got fired? Steve Underwood did the talking. Mike Mularkey got fired? John Robinson did the talking. John Robinson got fired? Mike Vrabel did the talking. Mike Vrabel got fired? Rand Carthon did the talking. So if you think she's going to change, and she's going to take this organization by the horns and say, all right, guys, because what she's going to have to say if she gets up there is what we all know. The results tell us this. She has to say she screwed up. And I don't think she's going to do that. Now, she might sit down with Mike Keith, and she might say to Mike Keith, you know, I screwed up, and, you know, now but she's not going to get up in front of everybody and lead the organization. That's not what she does. And we have enough data to know that that's just reality. But as far as, again, I want the Titans to win. That's why I'm so passionate. That's why I'm so worked up. Because I have been telling you about this snake oil for months and months and months. Jared, I had a guy come up to me at a wedding in Toronto 2 months ago who was like, you got to admit we're a better football team this year than we were last year. And I said, I mean, I don't think that, but I mean, maybe. And he was like, no, you have to admit it. Look at the players we went out and got. We are a better team. And I said, look, you don't get better by getting rid of Derrick Henry. He said, yeah, but I mean, think about all the players we went out and we got this year, Jared. Think about all the money we spent, Jared. Think about all the, at this point, he's a nice guy. But you look at this guy and I was like, I mean, you keep saying that it's not going to change my opinion because I knew. Because I knew. You know, I was talking to my dad about this yesterday. The moment for me, you know, when Rand first had his first press conference, I actually thought like, hey, you know, this guy, he seems like he's put together. He seems like he's buttoned up. Like he's got, you know, he came in the media room at St. Thomas Sports Park. It was like, hey guys, before I get up there, I mean, I just wanted to introduce myself. You know, obviously I'll be up there at the press conference, but I want to get to know everybody and, you know, have a casual relationship and a good working relationship there. And I'm like, that's a good move. He came on the show that day and I was like, I think Rand, you know, looks like, you know, all of the GM stuff he did the first day, all the things he said, it looks like he knows what he's doing. Then when it actually came to doing the job, there were a lot of cracks that I was like, wait a minute, hold on. What? And I go back to the Kevin Byard thing. Again, Mike Lombardi said that the Titans had asked Kevin Byard to take a pay cut. I thought that was crazy. I called somebody that would know. And I said, what's the deal? The same guy who told me John Robinson was getting fired about 10 minutes before John Robinson got fired. Ian, you were on that text chain when I texted you, Caroline, and Chase, and I was like, guys, we might have a huge situation here.
I was, yeah.
And then Ian Rappaport reported to me. I called the Titans. Nobody picked up. So the same guy told me, Yeah, apparently Kevin Byard wants guaranteed money next year, and the Titans aren't interested in that, so he's asked for a release. I said, what? He said, yeah, same guy who told me ahead of time that the Titans are firing John Robinson. I couldn't break the story because the Titans would pick up the phone. So I called the Titans and said, hey, I need Rand to call me at 150. I don't do that very often. I don't call over to the Titans or the Predators and say, hey, we need to talk now, unless it's something. And they said, well, we don't know. And I'm like, well, I mean, he's the general manager. And so, again, I think this is important enough. And I think I got enough cred that it's like, yeah, hey, like if it's important enough, then, and Rand never called. And people will say that when I told that story, that was kind of the first moment that I was like, I don't think that's very good general managering. And people will say, see, Jared's ego was hurt. Jared's ego was hurt that Rand didn't call him. I don't care about that. But it's the GM's job. When somebody's got to show that, again, you can't say it didn't move the needle because it was a massive story as soon as I went with it. And it was like 98% accurate. But again, as the GM, you got to know, like, hey, this guy, he almost never does this, says he needs to talk to you. Like, you call him, whatever. The GM's got to pick up the phone and handle the situation. I gave him an opportunity to discuss with me what the situation was, but he didn't take it. And I'm like, that's bad GMing. The fact that for 2 years they haven't given a rat's ass about right tackle, that's bad GMing. It's just alarming things one after another. That's like, these guys, they don't have a clue. Brinker sitting here talking about his AI cancer model. Come on now. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. 615-737-1025. We're back to your phones. Plus, not to rub it in, but your incompetent organization doesn't just look bad in their own games on a weekly basis. It's in the other games too. And I got a prime example of it. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company. 615-737-1025 here on a Titans Monday. Hey, tomorrow it's your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a player that scores a goal in the game tomorrow night, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Retro tomorrow morning at 8:45 a.m.
And now it's Henry time. Derrick cutting it outside. Derrick Henry! Touchdown, Ravens!
Secret way to score and be the best red zone team, be able to run the football, and he's as good as anybody. Washington brings everyone down. Jim, look at how many guys are right here.
2nd and 5. You still face that with power, with Henry, with a touchdown. Great call, Tony. His 2nd touchdown of the game.
Bring Ricard back from the left side and let the big guy. No one even wants to hit him.
Let the big dog eat. Ian, it sounded like that's what Tony Romo was about to say right there. It sounded like he was about to say, let the big dog eat. I mean, here comes Derrick Henry, 2 touchdowns, 120 whatever yards. He leads the NFL in rushing. He is the king. And he's the same guy he was when he was here. For 2 years, I took phone calls of people saying, Jared, you got to admit, Derrick Henry's washed. Derrick's no good. I think Derrick is doing just fine without the Titans. And he made it clear last week that he knew he was the same Derrick Henry. See, here's what's crazy is the Titans wanted to move off Derrick Henry. They wanted to move off of Derrick Henry. The report in The Athletic was the Ravens thought they had a deal for Derrick Henry, a 4th-round pick, conditional 3rd for Derrick Henry, and that, again, the general manager of the Ravens went on the record and said Titans ownership shot it down. That was reportedly the deal. Rand says that didn't happen, but I found Rand did not tell the truth a time or two in the past, and I don't see why the Ravens would say that if it wasn't true. So I hate to say it, but it probably was true that the Titans tried to trade the best player on the team and the best running back in the NFL, who still had it, for a 4th-round draft pick. A bag of footballs. And it's because the Titans can't scout talent. And some people will say, well, Jared, the Titans may have wanted Derrick Henry back, but why would Derrick Henry have wanted to stay here? And the reality is, Derrick knew the Titans didn't want him anymore. So what was his response? Okay, I'll go somewhere where I can go win a ring. That was how he felt. He felt like they don't want me back here. And it's great. They're going in a different direction. I'm going in a different direction. If the Titans had made overtures to say, Derrick, you are the foundation of this football team, and we're going to rebuild it on the fly, but you're a big part of this, and we're going to give you a contract, and we want you, that might have changed his opinion. Instead, it was, hey, we're trying to trade you for a 4th-round pick. That's what it was. And if you don't believe me, why don't you listen to Derrick Henry, who was on the Dan Patrick show last week, and he was asked about, hey, what happened when you left Tennessee there and everybody thinking you didn't have it anymore?
But do you think people doubted you after you left Tennessee? And did you still have, that get up and go? Could you still, be an elite running back?
Yeah, I think it was, doubt everywhere. I mean, I think it was doubt there that they didn't think I was where I used to be. But I knew that, I still had plenty left. And, when that next opportunity came as far as free agency, I was going to be ready to showcase that I can still go.
Derrick Henry's telling you right there. Yeah, I mean, I think they in Tennessee thought I wasn't the same anymore, that they could be better off without me. But I knew different. You know why? Because every time Derrick Henry got up at the podium and we'd say, Derrick, you had 9 carries for 27 yards this week. What's the problem? He'd say, yeah, we have to do better as a team. I have to do better running the ball. The end. Derrick, the lines let it, well, we all lose together as a team. And in reality, Derrick Henry's thinking, these guys suck. I am still me. I am still the king. These guys stink. If you put Roger Saffold in front of me, if you put Taylor Lewan in front of me, if you put those guys, I'd run just like I did. Because he's gone to Baltimore, and he said to Dan Patrick, I mean, I knew I was still good. And he's gone to Baltimore, and he's done the exact thing that he was doing here. So again, let's think about it like this. If you've got a great player, the best player at his position in the sport, which Derrick Henry is, you don't get better by losing that guy. You don't get better by trying to trade him for a 4th-round draft choice. You don't get better by not trying to re-sign him. You don't get better by alienating him. You don't get better by not being able to adequately analyze your own roster to say, you know what? Derrick's not really the problem. The problem is the guys in front of him that we're paying to block can't block. That's the issue here. Like, again, it's not about, well, but I want Derrick to go win a ring somewhere, so I don't care that Derrick's running it up for the Ravens. I mean, again, are you worried about the Ravens? Or are you worried about the Titans? Because I'm worried about the Titans. And so when I'm worried about Titans and the people that are doing the evaluating as to who to bring back, who not to bring back, they're saying, oh, we don't need Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's on the back 9. Derrick Henry's we can do better without Derrick. Well, you ask me right now, who's winning the divorce? You at 1-4 can't beat backup quarterbacks? Can't beat the Jets who fired their coach because he's so bad? Can't beat a rookie Caleb Williams in his first game when he doesn't know what he's doing? Or the Ravens, they just keep running Derrick Henry right into first place. Again, Ran Carthon got here and he wanted to tear it down to the studs. He wanted to get rid of Ryan Tannehill, he wanted to get rid of Derrick Henry, and he wanted to get rid of Kevin Byard. And in the end, he found a way to do it. Ryan Tannehill said on his way out, like, yeah, this is my last time here at the end. I hope people remember I did some good things here. So way to go. Let Rand cook. Chad Brinker's analytics. Because remember, Willie Donick said, the analytics say Tajay Spears is better than Derrick Henry. Yeah, I'd like to look at those analytics again. And Derrick Henry told you, yeah, they didn't think I was still good. Which means your guys can't evaluate. And if you can't evaluate talent in the NFL, you're never going to win. I'm sorry. And I know we're doing the same thing with this year's rookie class that people did with last year's rookie class. Look how good the rookie class is. Well, right now, Skoronski is a guard who can't pass block. Levis is the worst starting quarterback in the NFL, and Tajay Spears doesn't do anything. So now we're hyping up the guys they've drafted this year. Do you know that Tavondre Sweat yesterday had 0 sacks, 0 hits, and 0 pressures? Way to go. So, again, keep running it back with the same people that made your team worse from the day they showed up. I'm sure it'll be better. 615-737-1025 here on the program. If you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. I said if they lost to Indy, I said given the state that Indy was in, I said there's going to be some hard questions. Some really hard questions have to be asked. One of them is a question that I have to be honest with you, I truly hate bringing up. Like, it hurts me to have this conversation, but we have to. So we're going to do it next. 615-737-1025. Tune in to 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville tomorrow night for MTSU football. The Blue Raiders will take on Kennesaw State at Floyd Stadium. Pregame at 5:30. Kickoff is at 7. MTSU football coverage on 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville, presented by Sloan's Motorcycle ATV. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios on a Titans Monday. And again, I said on Friday, if you lose to Indy with the 32nd ranked defense after they just allowed Trevor Lawrence to throw for 380 passing yards, if you lose to Indy, who is without their best player, Jonathan Taylor, without their best defensive player, DeForest Buckner, if you lose to Indy, who's playing with a backup quarterback, Joe Flacco, in fact, Shane Steichen just announced Anthony Richardson will start on Sunday for Indianapolis. If you lose to Indy, then hard questions have to be asked. Again, talking about whether or not Will Levis should be the starting quarterback when he's throwing for 4 yards a cut is not a hard question. He stinks. This is a hard question that not even I enjoy talking about. But again, we got to talk about what's in the best interest of the Titans. We have to keep it real. We're all friends here. And what's the thing we do on this show? We tell the truth. So I'm not going to like this, but it is what it is. We got to talk about Brian Callahan. Let me say this from the jump. Brian Callahan is a good man. I think Brian Callahan has the best intentions. I think Brian Callahan is as solid of a guy as they come in that profession. I don't know him that well, but I think I know him well enough. That is a good man right there. So we may talk about the comparisons on the football field to Ken Wisenhunt, but there's no comparison in the personality department. But again, we're talking about winning and losing, not about personality. We have to have this question about Brian Callahan, which is he so bad of a coach that the Titans have to consider firing him after 1 year? And I hope the answer is no. But right now, the answer, I think, is yes. I'm sorry. Brian Callahan's a good guy, but again, good guys aren't always good coaches. I think Brian Callahan lacks experience, and I think he lacks a support system that can help him with his inexperience. His defensive coordinator, first-year DC, 0 experience. His offensive coordinator, 0 offensive coordinating experience. The only coach, I believe, on the coaching staff that has head coaching experience is his dad, and that was 20 years ago. His special teams coach is significantly worse than last year's special teams coach. And if you know this program, you know how much I couldn't stand that Craig Aukerman. I mean, the special teams coach doesn't even know the rules. The rules expert that they apparently employ doesn't know the rules. And managing the staff is one of the top jobs of a head coach. His quarterback development skills right now don't look very good. And I think it's obvious that even though Will Levis sucks, and some of that is just a reality of him, he's regressed from last year. So 5 games in, it's been a true disaster for Brian Callahan. Which now takes us to the whole, do you fire Brian Callahan at the end of the year? Well, for starters, let me just throw out the disclaimer that the season is not over. And so there could be time for Brian Callahan to show us that he's a capable head coach. But the issues with the Titans are so far at the top that I'm not even worried about 2024 anymore. And I've already said, I have no faith in Chad Brinker and Rand Carthon, whoever's in charge, whoever's deciding on the roster, whoever's decision it was to give away the money this offseason, whoever decision it was to let Derrick Henry go and not try to keep him, whoever's decision. I have no faith in the organizational hierarchy, which means, like I said last year when I had no faith, and I said, look, I don't think Vrabel's the guy to get you out of this, and I don't think clean house, And people said, you can't fire a general manager after 1 year. I said, why not? Well, now the head coach, I think, is in a similar situation. Because if you fire Chad Brinker and Ran Carthon, which I think you should do at the end of the year, because I don't trust them to go looking for the next quarterback, and I don't understand how you should trust them to go looking for the next quarterback either. But if you fire those guys, the next guy you bring in, Ian, what is the next guy that you bring in if you fire the decision makers in the personnel department? What's the first thing he's going to want to do?
Maybe bring in a coach.
He's going to want his own coach. And I'm not going to stand in the way of doing things the right way. The GM gets the job and hires the coach. The GM and the coach decide on the quarterback. That's what good organizations do. You know what this organization did? The GM got the job and the coach was already there. They drafted a quarterback. Who wanted the quarterback? I don't know. Reports are it was the owner. Then they fired the head coach. The GM, I guess, got to pick the coach. I don't know. But in this process, he technically got promoted, but effectively demoted because Chad Brinker, his subordinate, became the president of football operations, and the owner's doing videos talking about the young, exciting quarterback they have. So the head coach didn't get to pick the quarterback, and I don't know if the GM picked the quarterback or not, or if the president picked the quarterback, and again, I don't even know who's in charge. You see how concocted this is? So here's your choice. Number one, you keep him, Brian Callahan, no matter what, because you don't want the embarrassment of firing a coach after 1 year, especially after you got shamed by the national media for firing Mike Vrabel. Two, you give Callahan a pass because Will Levis wasn't his quarterback, even though he took the job under the premise of, I can do this with Will Levis. Or three, you think he can improve with a roster that is better with a different general manager, president, whatever the position is, and you think Brian Callahan with a better roster and a different GM, and you think Brian Callahan can succeed. But again, what is a new general manager going to want to do? He's going to want his own coach. And what is a new general manager going to want to do? He's going to want his own quarterback. Which now leads us to, if this doesn't get any better, how in the world can you trust the same people that drafted Will Levis, the same people who put this team together, which is terrible? How can you trust them with the number 2 overall draft pick, with the number 1 overall draft pick? You're probably going to lose the next 2 games. You're probably coming home 1-6 playing the Patriots, and the loser of that game probably gets the number 1 pick. How can you trust all these same people with these premium assets? And so Brian Callahan hasn't done anything to me that make me think he's a good coach so far. I mean, I even called it out, and I like Brian Callahan a lot. But I called out the toxic positivity all offseason. I called out the sunshine pumping. Remember, Levis and Calvin Ridley can't connect. How concerned are you? Well, it was hot out there. It was hot. I remember people said this about Jamar Chase, and it wasn't a problem there. Yeah, well, I don't know if you know this, but Will Levis and Calvin Ridley ain't Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. You got a problem. And so far, it's been bad. And again, if I am convinced that Ran and Carthon or Ran and Brinker are not the guys, which I am convinced of it. If I'm convinced of it and I fire them, my new he's going to want to hire his own coach. So again, I cannot stress to you enough that there's room to improve. But right now, what I'm seeing is in no way an acceptable level of coaching. It's not acceptable. And I hear that word all the time. You know, again, when it comes to the loss on Sunday. If I said to you scoring 17 points against the worst defense in the NFL, if I said, how would you feel about that? you would say, well, I mean, it's unacceptable, right? You're going to blame the coach for it? Going to blame the guy who put the roster together? Going to blame the president? Going to blame all these people that, again, they thought they were going to be competing for the playoffs this year. They did. And if they say that they didn't think that, then they lied to you then, or they're lying to you now. So today is a day for the hard questions. The inexcusable losses yield the tough conversations. And this is not a conversation I enjoy having because I like Brian Callahan a lot. Think he's a very good man. But right now, I think I think we got to keep it real. Right now, it probably would make more sense for him to be a one-and-done head coach, unless you just can't stomach the embarrassment of doing that. And it should be noted, when it comes to firing your coach after 1 year, San Francisco hired Jim Tomsula when they lost Jim Harbaugh. They fired him after a year. They then hired Chip Kelly. They fired him after a year. Everybody thought San Francisco was dysfunctional. They hired Kyle Shanahan. If you don't have the guy, you don't have the guy. And Brian Callahan knew what he was getting into when he signed up to come work for the Titans and work for this, again, structure with Brinker and Carthon. And he knew what he was getting into. He knew this was the organization that fired John Robinson 8 months after he got a contract extension. He knew that he was going to be inheriting this quarterback. It is what it is. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We will get to your phones here on the program. And I will say this about Brian Callahan. We talk about problems. Well, he's already got one big problem on his hands right now. And it's not, again, it's a problem. And I don't know how Coach Sunshine's going to work his way out of this. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Levis to the air to begin this drive. Boy, a tight window to throw there, looking for Calvin Ridley, and it's incomplete. For Calvin Ridley, Arch, very, very quiet. Just can't get him going in this offense.
Listen, I believe that they've taken too long to go outside because Calvin Ridley over the last 2 seasons has been one of the top receivers outside the numbers. And if you look at the Colts defense, they've given up an NFL high 604 yards to receivers outside the numbers. To me, they should have been attacking and using Ridley and Hopkins and going at these corners.
Boy, what a bullet that time. Football came out. Let's see if they're going to rule. Yes, they will rule this an incompletion as Womack with the hard hit. And Calvin Ridley just unable to squeeze it for Tennessee.
Well, look at this play. And it looked like Ridley didn't. It looked like a lapse of concentration because there he just bobbles it, and that bobble doesn't allow him to secure it.
That was Calvin Ridley. Again, they tried to get him the ball. Sometimes they underthrew it. Sometimes they overthrew it. Sometimes they threw it right in his hands, and it hit him in the hands, and it popped out. They threw it to him 8 times. Probably 4 of them were something that you would expect that he could have made a play on. One of them he absolutely dropped. 0 catches, 0 yards. And again, he was it's hilarious. They spent all this money in the offseason, and he and Snead are kind of the highlight of it. And both of them had horrendous games. Well, we're talking about whether or not Brian Callahan's actually the man to be the head coach of this football team. And here comes a big moment in his tenure because after the game, Calvin Ridley, who has said all the right things all the time since the moment he signed, Calvin Ridley finally let his frustrations out a little bit.
They wanted to kind of make getting you targets and part of this offense a priority today, and to kind of not have it result in any catches. I guess what was kind of off that resulted in targets but no catches?
I had targets in what part of the game I had targets?
Fourth quarter, a lot of them.
All right, then. So I need some in the beginning of the game too. Then getting crazy for me. So I'm just, it is what it is. I suck today. I got to be better. But I got to get the ball a little early in the game so I can be in the game and here with the team so I can play well also.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I need the ball early in the game. Brian Callahan was asked about it today, and he talked about how, we designed plays for him to get the ball early, but it just didn't go to him. Too many plays we got to drop for Traylon Burks, I guess. I don't know. This is a big moment for Brian Callahan as a head coach. Because if Brian Callahan says that he's drawing up plays to get Ridley the ball early in the game, and Ridley is saying he's got to get the ball early in the game, then by deductive reasoning, the reason he's not getting the ball early in the game is because Will Levis is not throwing him the ball early in the game. That's a problem. Because Calvin Ridley's not going to play nice with Will Levis forever. Remember when he said when they couldn't connect on the deep ball in the Seattle practices, and he said, oh, yeah, I didn't run as hard. It was hot out there. And we said, why would he say he didn't run as hard? Basically, I think now we know he wasn't throwing Levis under the bus. That's why. Hey, he sucks. But he's not going to say it. He's going to be the good soldier. That's only going to go on for so long. Derrick on the midday show, D-Mace, has been hinting at this. Ian, how long has he been hinting at this for? 4 weeks?
Maybe after the second game? Something like that, probably.
He said, hey, these players, these guys, they're going to give up on Will Levis sooner rather than later.
Yeah, second or third game, maybe, after that.
And it's only going to last so long, and then Brian Callahan is risking losing his locker room. Derrick said it, not me. Derrick spent 15 years in an NFL locker room, and 15 years, one as the underappreciated, never given a chance at wide receiver punt returner, 2 as an all-pro wide receiver, and 3 as the elder statesman grizzled veteran for a young quarterback. He's been through it all. The quarterback that beat you yesterday, Derrick was his receiver when he was a rookie. So these guys, when Derrick says, hey, this is only going on for so long, And then eventually, this is not, no, we're not allowing this. When Derrick says that, he's not lying. And it seems like he's been right that, hey, Calvin Ridley's not going to let this go on much longer. So how does Mr. Nice Guy handle it? How does Mr. Sunshine handle it? Remember when Jeffrey Simmons threw that punch in practice, didn't kick out because Mr. Nice Guy said, I didn't think I needed to kick him out of practice. And I said, hey, I would have done it. I'd have thrown. Well, now what do? Do you appease Ridley? Because then everybody in the locker room is going to say, well, I'm not getting my touches either. Do you not appease Ridley to prove it? What do you do? Boy, it's fun being coach, isn't it? Bud Grant used to always say, and I have to take Floyd's word for this because, I never met Bud Grant. He was a great coach, but I never met him. But Bud Grant apparently used to say, coaching in the NFL is the best job in the world when you win. With the unsaid part being, it's probably miserable if you lose. Welcome to being a head coach. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, 615-737-1025. Let's go to Malika, who is up next on our program, has been waiting patiently. Malika, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Thank you for taking my call, Mr. Stillman. I'm going to be quick. He is a bust. He is a horrible. I'm getting 2 years. There's no excuse, and we need a new quarterback next year. We need to fire Callahan and Carthon. This is just so ridiculous. Thank you, sir.
Ian, how old do you think he is?
Malika? I believe it was a female.
Oh,
I believe
okay.
Malika was a lady. But I don't know.
All I know is, look, I'm going to tell you right now. If I own the Titans, I said this last year and I got called racist for it, and I thought that was ridiculous because I said after the Jacksonville game that I'd clean house at the end of the year, and even though I said I'd fire the coach, apparently they didn't care about that. It was, oh, yeah, you want to fire the GM after 1 year, racist. And I'm like, no, you got to get the right people in the organization. They just promoted a guy who, sells snake oil, I think. They promoted him up. But let me say this. If things don't get better, if I own the team, that's exactly what I would do. Because I'm not letting the same people that took a competitive football team and have made it the worst team in the league, I'm not letting them get to pick the next quarterback and use the third overall pick. So that means goodbye Rand Carthon, goodbye Chad Brinker. So a new GM comes in, and a new GM's going to want his own coach, and I don't want to hold that GM back. So GM gets goodbye Brian Callahan. And if you got the number 2 pick, chances are these guys are probably going to decide they want their own quarterback too. And I certainly can't imagine that Will Levis and his 95 passing yards are going to stand in the way if I've already fired everybody else of me keeping him. I don't disagree. At that point, it's almost like, hate to say it, but there's got to be massive changes. The last time the Titans were this bad, it's actually funny to me because when John Robinson got fired, I was very against it. Because even though Robinson had been messing up, he still was a winning GM. And before you bitch about me saying he's a winning GM, he never had a losing season. So it's kind of hard to say he's not a winning GM. And I said to somebody, because, with the Titans, once they say they try to justify everything. And I said, look, I've been around with the Titans the entire time. I've been riding and dying since the first game against Cincinnati at home. They won by a point on an Al Del Greco field goal. And I know when they've had competent GMing from 2 separate guys. And in between them, it felt like Moses in the desert. And I said, I don't want to go back to the desert for 40 years. How is this not the desert? 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. We're back to your phones here on the program. And there's one thing again, as we're talking about Brian Callahan, that is just getting up my craw. Because he alluded to it a couple of times today. And it's the lamest excuse I've ever heard. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. Let me tell all the fine folks to join me, Chris, and Derrick at Cool Springs this Sunday for the award-winning pregame show, 9:30 to 11:30. It says we'll break down the Week 7 matchup against the Bills, but I have a feeling it's going to be one of these State of the Titans type shows that we'll have. The award-winning pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sundeck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon.
When you weigh those dynamics of doing what it takes to win week to week against the development, figuring out who players are, where do the priorities stack right now?
Well, the priority is always to try to find a way to win. And I've always been, this is sort of whatever it takes, whatever style you have to play, however the game plan has to play out. It's whatever it takes to give us a chance to win the game. And I think, again, outside of the Green Bay game, we've been in those spots. We've been in position to win a game, and we haven't found a way to do that yet. And I think that's the biggest issue right now, is just finding that way to make the play, make the throw, make the tackle, make the interception, return a punt, something that gives us a chance to make a play to win the game. And it's not just one phase, it's all three phases. But yeah, our focus is always going to be, how do we best put ourselves in position to win the game?
That was Brian Callahan. He's sitting here saying, hey, guys, other than the Green Bay game, these are all one-score games. We're right there. Talk about the lamest excuse. Number one, the Titans used that excuse last year on the day after they fired Mike Vrabel. Or maybe it was the day they fired Mike Vrabel. I can't remember. Rand Carthon met with the media. And again, the big excuse right here from Brian Callahan is these are one-score games. This was Rand Carthon's response when asked if the 6-win Titans last year failed after firing their coach. Here's what he said.
Rand, you said when at the draft or when you were introduced that your number one thing was to serve Mike. Given today's developments, did you fail at that?
I don't think we failed. I just think, one of the things Mike's always says is that the ball isn't round, so you don't know how it's going to bounce. And I don't think the ball bounced our way. We had 7 one-score losses this year, so we were in games, just the ball didn't bounce our way. I wouldn't consider it a failure, but by no means, were we happy with the results. And that's just something we've talked about, privately and as a group over the last couple months of, how do we get this thing right and how do we get this thing, in the right direction. So I wouldn't call it a failure, but it's definitely not up to the standard.
Oh, so the ball didn't bounce our way because we were in 7 one-score games. And if the ball bounced the other way, we would have won. Brian Callahan, again, he's trying to say the same thing about, hey, these are all one-score games. We're right there. You're right there against the 32nd defense in the NFL. The Colts didn't have their best player on offense. They didn't have their best player on defense. They were playing a backup quarterback. You were at home coming off of a bye. You should win that game. Period. The reason you didn't get blown out is because the Colts suck. That's why. Again, the Titans have played 5 games this year. They're 1-4. 3 have come against backup quarterbacks. 1 was against a quarterback making his NFL debut, and quite frankly, he was horrible. And the other game was against a head coach who has already been fired. One of the games, the one that wasn't a one-score game, was against a quarterback that you gave away for a bag of footballs. But hey, we only lost by 1 score. The NFL is designed for one-score games. That's how this league works. Ken Wisenhunt lost 20 games. He was 3-20 as the head coach of the Titans. 8 of his 20 losses were one-score games. And I bet you if he only played backup quarterbacks, they all would have been one-score games. Then a one-score game against Ben Roethlisberger. So give me a break. Well, we're only losing these one-score games. Everybody plays one-score games. And you want to know what the difference between you and the Chiefs are? By the way, when you lost to the Chiefs in overtime with Malik at quarterback, that was a one-score game. And that Chiefs team won the Super Bowl. But you want to know what the difference between you and the Chiefs are? The teams that win the one-score games? They have the players that make the big plays in the big moments to get you ahead in the one-score games. You had 2 players that made those plays. 3 if you count Danico, who I thought did make some of those plays. A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry. And they're not here anymore. So this one-score game thing, it's a crutch. It's an excuse. Yesterday's loss was unacceptable. absolutely unacceptable. It just, and if you make an excuse that, well, it was a one-score game, you're accepting it, and I'm not doing that. So when I hear, well, I mean, it was only a one-score game, you scored 17 points against the worst defense in the NFL. You threw for 95 yards a week after Trevor Lawrence almost threw for 400. And Trevor Lawrence stinks. And he almost threw for 400 on the same defense. Give me a break. Give me a break. You know, I say this when Rand says that crap, and I'm like, we're not that stupid. So stop insulting our intelligence. So when Brian Callahan gets up there, he's like, God, we need that one kick return. Well, why don't you fire your bozo special teams coach who can't even get them lined up right on a kickoff? Every week it's something with the special teams. Every freaking week. They had a punt return yesterday. They couldn't get lined up on the kickoff. They can't return any punts. I mean, it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. And by the way, he won't fire the special teams coach who doesn't know the rules. The special teams coach who keeps getting these punts blocked. The special teams coach who can't return a punt, can't get lined up on a kickoff. He won't fire him. And then he sits there and says, well, I mean, we keep losing these one-score games. Maybe get somebody that actually knows special teams in there, and they'll make a play on special teams, and you'll win a one-score game in spite of your terrible quarterback. Say more stuff like that, and I'll want to fire you tomorrow. That's like Levis with his excuse of, well, you know, that interception I threw, my arm wasn't right. Then sit your ass on the bench if you're not healthy enough to be accountable for your play. It's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing the excuses this organization makes. It's embarrassing. The lies. That's what it is. The lies. They can't cover their ass for all the stuff they said in the offseason, so now they make up crap. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And it's beneath, I think, the standards of accountability that they would tell you that they have going into all of this. Let's go to Mike in Old Hickory, who's up next here on our program. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, how you doing?
Good.
Not a good day, another loss, but here's my opinion on this, on Will Levis. I think we need to just go ahead and keep him in there because I think we all agree we're not going to the playoffs this year. We're not going to backdoor in, as a wild card or whatever. This is a bad season. We're not paying him much because he's only a second-year quarterback, so we're not paying him much. He was drafted as the heir apparent. I say throw him in there every game, throw everything at him that we think he can handle or not handle, find out who he is by the end of the season, and then we'll know. Now we can go to a draft in 2025.
Do you trust the same guys to draft the next quarterback?
Listen, I just think that we got a terrible organization going on now, and I think by the end of the season, we're going to be in even worse trouble. That's why I'm saying is since we're not paying the guy a lot of money as a second-year quarterback, go ahead and use him up. Find out what he's really about. Keep him in there.
I don't care about that. I don't, Mike, we're on the same page. Quarterback stinks. But if you tank and you get the number 2 pick, do you trust the same guys that picked this quarterback?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. That's the story. Mike, thank you for your call. That's the story. That's the discussion. It's not, again, people are like, well, I think we should go to, I think we should keep Levis. You're going to stink no matter what. You're not beating Buffalo. I don't care who plays quarterback. You're not beating the Bills. You're not beating the Lions. So what if you beat the Patriots with Mason Rudolph? Great. The Titans will probably dump Gatorade on the coach if they do something like that, the way they pump positivity over there. But the story is not about the quarterback. We know he sucks. The story is not about the backup quarterback. We know he's not any good. Again, the story is once you get through the tanking, do you let Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker pick your next quarterback? And that's the question. Somebody in the YouTube chat said all these callers talking about keeping Levis in, like we're past that, dog. Like, yeah, again, like I said earlier today, talking about Levis's status on this team, that's below my pay grade. I don't care. Do whatever you want. 615-737-1025. Also, number 1 defense, my ass. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Denard said this week that Legarius is the best cornerback in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel like he looked like the best quarterback in the league today?
I don't need to comment on that. I think Legarius is a really good football player, and I'm glad we have him. Michael Pierce has beat a lot of guys on go ball so far this season, and that one there was one jump ball and it was one down the sideline that got called for a PI, but I'm glad we have him. He's a really good football player.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan yesterday talking about, I'm not worried about Legarius Sneed. Ian, I am. That was an inexcusable performance yesterday by Legarius Sneed. Inexcusable. Denard Wilson gets up in front of everybody and says, I think he's the best corner in the NFL and he doesn't get the respect he deserves. And then he goes out there and he gets toasted by a Michael Pittman who's so injured that he almost, Adam Schefter's reporting that he's supposed to go on IR. And then he goes out and he gets toasted by Alec Pierce and he has to pull his arm back. And, there were a couple of deep balls Joe Flacco missed. He got toasted against Miami. Thank God they were playing a Scarbini quarterback, because if not, they would have completed those on Legarius Sneed. Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers had the completion on a 2nd and 21 on Legarius Sneed against the Jets. When did Legarius Sneed become Trey Avery? And I know the Colts scored 20 points. They had a backup quarterback in there, and they were without their best player. And they still scored 20 points. The defense sucks. The defense is good statistically because, again, they've played nothing but backup quarterbacks. So it's like, wow, you're playing Malik Willis. You should do well. You're playing Snoop Huntley. You should do well. But the Titans' defense, my opinion, isn't very good. I know. They're number one. I know. But you can take that and shove it up your rear end. They don't sack the quarterback. They don't force turnovers. I know Hooker had the interception Joe Flacco threw right to him yesterday. But again, when you have to have it, they don't force turnovers. They don't get stops at the end of the game when they need them. They didn't get a stop against the Jets. They didn't get a stop against the Colts. And they really didn't get any stops against the Packers. So, what are we doing? And not only that, but also we got Jeffrey Simmons after the game bitching at John Glennon, because John Glennon's sitting here saying like, hey, you guys didn't get sacks yesterday. And Jeffrey Simmons tried to tell everybody sacks don't matter.
What about getting pressure on Joe today? I'm sure he gets it out quick, but did you guys feel like you should have had better pressure?
Better. You watch the same game? We was in his face. We're going to see the film tomorrow, but I feel like we was rushing their line good. We was in the backfield, was in his face. I guess because we didn't get sacks like we wanted to. I think that's what people on the outside look at too much. When we watch film and we tell a guy a good rush, that's what we look for. It's not all about sacks. It's about how can you affect his throws. We did that. He got the ball off sometime quick, but at the end of the day, this game not all just about sacks. We got to learn how to just block that out sometime. And yes, we want sacks, but it's also how can you affect the game by pushing the pocket, just like the interception. That wasn't a sack, but we pushed the pocket when Nelson hit the quarterback and he threw a pick. So that's just a prime example right there. It's not all about sacks. It's about how can you affect the throws.
Okay, that's great. I'll take the sacks. It's great to sit there and say, hey, it's not just about sacks. It's about, okay, I'll take the sacks. By the way, yesterday, Simmons, 0 sacks, 0 quarterback hits. He did have 4 pressures, which is nice, but are we paying $23.5 million to pressure the quarterback? Are we paying $23.5 million to sack the quarterback? T'Vondre Sweat, the great T'Vondre Sweat. Titans Twitter thinks T'Vondre Sweat's going to the Hall of Fame. T'Vondre Sweat, 0 sacks, 0 hits, 0 pressures. Arden Key, 0 sacks, 0 hits, 1 pressure. Harold Landry had 4 pressures and a quarterback hit. Yeah, this is such a great defense. You know what's going to be hilarious? Because, again, they've told themselves they're so good, and their coaches tell them how good they are all the time. Again, Denard Wilson says, Legarius needs the best corner in the league. He can't cover Alec Pierce, but he's the best corner in the league, apparently. He can't cover Garrett Wilson, but he's the best corner in the league. He can't cover Tyreek Hill, but he's the best corner in the league. We're going to see next week in Buffalo when Josh Allen's playing quarterback, and Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox and those guys are out there. And again, they don't even have a good receiving core. Shakir is good, though. But I'm sorry. I mean, you guys can have this number one defense. Number one defense, my rear end. Let's go to Isaac, who's up next here on the State of the Titans. Thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead, Isaac.
Hey, Jared, man, I'm just calling in basically. From viewing it from the first game up until now, this locker room is lost. This team is set up for failure. Brian does not have control of this locker room. Just listening to Calvin on yesterday, and then even listening to this playback of Jeffrey, it's like, no one seems to be on the same page. I have accepted that we are definitely top 3 picking in the next upcoming draft. And I wouldn't be shocked if Brian is fired next year or maybe this year, depending on how bad these losses come, because I have a bad feeling Detroit is going to do something dangerous to us, worse than what they just did to the Cowboys.
Do you trust the same guys who were here when they picked Will Levis to pick the next quarterback if they get the number 2 pick?
Hell no.
Okay. Again, that's the discussion. Thank you for your call. That's the discussion. Do you trust those guys? Everything else is just, if you're going to say, who cares about the Detroit game? Lose 100-0. I don't care. Who cares? It's all about when you get that pick, what do you trust the person that's going to have it? One texter, by the way, says, you don't pay defensive tackles to get sacks, Jared. Funny, what did the Rams pay Aaron Donald to do? Somebody enlighten me. What did the Buccaneers pay Warren Sapp to do? No, what you don't do is you don't draft a run-stuffing DT with the 38th pick if you don't expect him to get sacks. DJ Reader is one of the best run-stuffing DTs in the NFL. He was a free agent this year, and he makes $8 million because it just ain't that valuable. Just like kicker. Again, I think having a good kicker is important. Would you pay your kicker $15 million and you know the answer? 615, would you draft him in the first round? 615-737-1025. We will get back to your phones. Plus, facts do not care about feelings. And the facts, since the pivotal moment in this franchise's recent history, paint a very obvious picture. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios on a Titans Monday. And I said this after the Green Bay game. I said, if you lose to Malik Willis a month after you gave him away for a bag of footballs, there are going to be some hard questions to answer. Remember, coming into the season, the Titans were talking about the vibes in the building. Guys can be themselves. Remember that? Guys can be themselves in the building now. Yeah, great. Again, that's a feeling. Oh, man, we've got it going on here. Calvin Ridley wanted to be on this team because his wife's from Huntsville. That's feeling. Man, the guys in the locker room are so tight. A feeling. But the facts do not back up the feelings. I look at the line of demarcation, the moment of truth, being when Amy Adams Strunk fired John Robinson in the middle of the 2022 season. Again, your feelings may have been that the Titans weren't very good then. The facts are the Titans were 7-5. They had an over 90% chance of winning their division, according to the New York Times playoff predictor. And they had been to the playoffs 3 years in a row. They had won 2 straight division titles. And again, they were in first place for a third. John Robinson, as general manager of the Tennessee Titans, won 61% of his games. Again, that's not a feeling. That's a fact. But Jared, he traded away A.J. Brown. Yes, that was a bad trade. And good general managers make bad decisions. But it is impossible to argue that the Titans are better off since that moment. Because since the Titans fired John Robinson, they are 7-20. Just for reference, remember how bad the Ken Wisenhunt era was? He was 3-20. So at least you've been a little bit better than that. But you also had Derrick Henry for a large stretch of that, who in Baltimore is proving he's still the best running back in the NFL and still really good. The Carolina Panthers over the same stretch that you're 7-20 in are 6-22. You're basically one game better than Carolina over the same stretch. The gold standard for crappy in the NFL. The gold standard for bad ownership. 6-22. You're 7-20. New England, boy, they've been bad since Tom Brady left. Over the same stretch that you're 7-20 in, the Patriots, with Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi and Jacoby Brissett and now Drake May, are 7-21. And that includes the experiment Bill Belichick ran in 2022 when he decided, in 2023, when he decided that he was going to let his defensive coordinator run the offense for whatever reason. Denver, but Ian, Denver sucks, right?
Yeah.
Or at least they have.
Kind of, yeah.
Denver's 13-15. So over the same period that you've been 7-20, Denver with Russell Wilson and Bo Nix, and not the good Russell, the bad Russell, 13-15. Face it, you suck. Everything that you may say outside of why John Robinson was good and why it's been so bad and why everything that you can argue is a feeling. It is a feeling. I think the A.J. Brown trade is the reason why. I think that there was the facts. He won 61% of his games. Period. Since then, you're 7-20. And wouldn't you argue that this season is the worst you've been? That even when you were running Josh Dobbs out there against Jacksonville, you had a better football team? That last year, you were a better football team than you are this year? But again, that's a feeling, and I understand we're talking about the facts here. And again, I use that as kind of the moment of truth because that's when Amy Adams Strunk put her foot down and said, I am taking my franchise in my direction. You know, I kept making this joke about Leroy Watson and comparing it to Leroy Jenkins. Leroy Jenkins, it's a famous internet video where all these computer nerds are playing World of Warcraft and some guy just decided to go YOLO. We call it going Leroy Jenkins. Amy went Leroy Jenkins on the Titans, and since then, you're worse than Denver. You're almost as bad as Carolina. And you know what's funny? Is, again, we go back to feelings. Why this isn't. Derrick Henry was a part of that, but Derrick Henry's gone somewhere else, and I think the facts say Derrick Henry's the best running back in the NFL. And Baker Mayfield was in Carolina when they lost those games, and Baker Mayfield's gone somewhere else, and the stats say Baker Mayfield's pretty good. And Sam Darnold was in Carolina, and Sam Darnold was part of those games, and Sam Darnold is 5-0. Again, that's a fact. It's not a feeling. It's a fact. And at some point, doesn't Amy have to look in the mirror and say, man, ever since I did something that people in the league were stunned by, ever since I made that move, firing a winning general manager while we were sitting in first place at 7-5 after we had been to after we had won 2 straight divisions. The year prior, we were the number 1 seed in the AFC playoffs. 2 years before that, we went to the AFC championship game. We won a lot of ball. Ever since that moment, we've been as bad as the Carolina Panthers. At some point, don't you think she should look in the mirror and say, maybe I'm the problem? You know, I go back to the Wisenhunt days and just how bad it was. And it was bad. But when they fired Ken Wisenhunt, Amy was the controlling owner. Tommy Smith, her brother-in-law, was the one who had hired Ken Wisenhunt, and they ran him out. They ran him out. And they brought back Steve Underwood to be the president. Steve Underwood had 40 years of experience in the NFL. 40. He was the interim president for a year, and then they made him the full-time president. And it's amazing because with Steve Underwood running the franchise, the Titans found John Robinson and hired Mike Mularkey and made it to the playoffs, and again hired Mike Vrabel and went back to the playoffs and went to the AFC title game and won the division and all this stuff. But Steve Underwood retired in 2020. And ever since Steve Underwood retired, it seems like it's one thing after another. Again, your feelings may tell you that Rand Carthon's better than John Robinson. I ran a poll today. Said, who's the better general manager? John Robinson or Rand Carthon / Chad Brinker? 70% of you said John Robinson. By the way, 30% of you apparently don't watch football. But again, you can keep telling yourself that you think it's better now. That's a feeling. But the facts don't back that up. The facts say you're right there with Carolina. So you have 2 choices. You can either get mad at the mean radio man, blame the way the ball bounces, say that it was Mike Vrabel's fault, embrace the feelings that will make you feel better about your football team, but don't reflect reality. Or you can be honest with yourself and say, something's got to change around here. And I don't know if that means Amy's got to bring in another Steve Underwood. Because, again, I know Burke Nihill, who's taken over for Steve Underwood, he had no NFL experience before showing up at the Titans. And maybe the feeling is Burke knows what he's doing as CEO of the organization. I think he's more like stadium stuff anyways. Maybe that's the feeling. But the facts say it's not the same. The facts say you stink. The facts say 7-20. since you fired John Robinson. The facts say John Robinson won 61% of his games. The facts say you won 2 straight division titles. The facts say you went to the playoffs 3 years in a row. The facts say you went to the playoffs 4 out of 5 years, including an AFC title game. The facts say Derrick Henry, who you let walk out the door, is the best running back in the NFL. I don't know what your feelings are telling you, but those are the facts. So again, you can either dispute it or you can, quite frankly, be honest. And if you're not willing to be honest in any profession, football, anything else, you have no chance of getting better. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We are to your phones next. 615-737-1025 here on a Titans Monday, Stillman and Company. Let's talk let me talk about Window Nation. I love Hiller, but I also love Window Nation. I absolutely love my friends at Window Nation, and I love the fact that they will take great care of your home. They will. You call up Window Nation, they'll take your old windows. They're going to let all that heat out because they're older, and you're going to get the energy efficient ones that are going to save you money. And right now, if you buy 2 windows, you'll get 2 windows free. Plus, you'll pay nothing for 24 months. Again, right now, buy 2 windows, get 2 free. There's no telling how much you could save by getting as many windows as you need. And you'll pay nothing for 24 months. Hurry, because the sale ends October 31st. So schedule that in-home estimate by calling 866-90NATION or by visiting windownation.com. That's 866-90NATION, windownation.com.
the one thing that stood out to us with Callie was just his ability to not only know what he wants, but be able to articulate that in a clear and concise manner. And what that would allow us to do, it allow our players to understand what their roles are and go out and execute and play fast, which is what we're going to do. But on the other side of that, as a scout, as a personnel guy, it gives us the ability to know what we're going out to hunt for. And one thing that we keep talking about here as our group is hunting at the same time isn't the same as hunting together. And under Brian Callahan, we will be going out and hunting together.
We will hunt together. Well, I mean, again, that comment during the Brian Callahan introductory press conference, that got a lot of people in their feelings. That made them feel good about the state of the franchise. You know what that hunting together has equaled? Losing together. And again, you can debate it, but those are the facts. You're losing. You're 1-4, and you've lost to, let me think, 2 backup quarterbacks, a team that's already fired their coach, and Caleb Williams in his first NFL game. You suck. Let's go to your phones as promised. 615-737-1025. Aaron has been waiting patiently and is up next on our program. Aaron, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, I have a couple feelings for the Mean Radio, man. But I feel like the team, and you think with the young offensive coach that they would play loose, and they're just playing so uptight. And I also feel like the refs really got over on us at Sunday. I was there, and it seemed like we were just expecting the flag when we made a play, and just never getting a flag called our way.
So do you think the refs ruined the game?
I think they cost us several plays, key plays. Could have swung the game easily. I mean, if you don't think that they had the same kind of penalty that Snead had on that
DeAndre
long
Hopkins
pass
on the third down. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, thank you for the call. I don't give a rat's ass about the refs. Oh, wow. You need the refs calls to beat to score more than 17 points against the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL, playing a team that just gave up 380 passing yards to Trevor Lawrence after you're coming off your bye. You need the refs' help? Let me say this. The third down non-call on the ball to DeAndre Hopkins was borderline criminal. And I was a little disappointed that Brian Callahan didn't go into detail in his press conference after the game, because Brian Callahan was like, well, I can't speak about the refs. I'm like, dude, if you want to, stand up for your players, here's your opportunity. But I don't care. If you need the refs to win that game yesterday, forget about it. If you need the refs to win. Let's go to Logan, who's up next here on our program. Logan, thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
Hey, so I just got a quick question. Might be a little bit longer. So we would both agree that Teron Davenport is an amazing reporter, right?
Great guy, great reporter.
And we would also say that the Titans have been pretty awful these last 2 years and have a possibility of being terrible for the next, I don't know, we'll say 3 to 5 years. I'm trying to be optimistic.
Where are you going with this?
So what I'm saying is, I don't really know how all of this works with ESPN, but I know as a fan and somebody who really loves listening to Teron, I don't want him to be relocated to another team because of how terrible our team is. Yeah, I just don't know how that works. Oh, also last thing, quick point. When Rand said we all hunt together, to be honest, it's more like we're all starving. The fans, the reporters, the team, everybody. But I'll hang up and listen to you. Thank you.
Yep. I mean, again, I don't know what keeps TD here or covering another team. I don't know. I'll say this. This is just my opinion personally. I think that ESPN, they do things their own way. They've got their draft guys. They've got their, their gurus. I think Teron is as good and as thorough on the draft as anybody that I listen to. And I'm serious about that. In terms of how much tape he watches, he goes to the Senior Bowl, he gets to know players, he gets to, that is something that I think is an underutilized asset in his toolbox that we use the hell out of, during the offseason, the scouting and okay, TD, what are we thinking about this guy? And what are we thinking about this in the third round and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think ESPN uses it the way they should. But I have no idea if he would be relocated because the Titans stink so bad. There was something else he said I can't remember, but make of that what you will. Let's go to Mutt, who's up next here on a Titans Monday, 615-737-1025. Go ahead, Mutt.
Great show, man. I'll get straight to the point. I was there at the game, and I saw 3rd and 1. It was very manageable, and I saw us line up in shotgun and try to hand it off. I mean, I missed the power eye. I mean, it was very manageable. Anyways, that's what I'm getting at is, man, I don't feel like we got a coach or a quarterback, and I think if one of them was better, they would drag the other one along. But I feel like they're both inadequate, and I'm just lost, man. I'm desperate. Like, give me some good news. Like, where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, if you were looking for good news, I don't know what to tell you. Thank you for your call, Mutt. I mean, I think the problems, again, and I'll say this, I think the problems with the Titans are at the very top. I think the Titans are at the very top. I think, I never like invoking what Floyd would have thought or what Floyd would have said or what Floyd would have done because I don't think that's fair to him. And there were many times when he and I would disagree on something, or when I'd, have something down on the show that I wanted to talk about, thinking that I knew what he was going to say, and he'd actually feel the opposite. So I don't ever like doing this. But one thing I used to remember about Floyd was there were a lot of, whoa now, that would come out of his mouth. And I do wonder if some of the mistakes the Titans have made over the years would not have happened if Floyd was here. For instance, I think the A.J. Brown trade, and when I say this is not a cover for John Robinson. In fact, I think this is, a real disappointment, is I think that the Titans and John Robinson, led by John Robinson, got played by A.J. Brown's agent, Torrey Dandy, who was trying to reset the market for his clients after he got below market deals for Chris Godwin and Mike Williams. He agreed to deals for them before the receiver market exploded, and he needed to make a score with A.J. Brown because he tried the same thing in San Francisco with Deebo Samuel, and San Francisco just said, I mean, you can complain all you want. We're not going to change what we're doing. And the Titans did. And I think that's bad. And I've always wondered, if Floyd was around, would there be like a, whoa now, like let's not jump the ship. Let's not all these things. Whoa now. And I do wonder, again, I keep saying this, I do wonder if Steve Underwood was the whoa now when it came to Amy. Now, look, they fired Mike Mularkey after he made the playoffs and won the playoff game, in 2018 or 2017. They won their first playoff game for the first time since 2003, and they still fired him. So maybe Steve Underwood wouldn't have thrown his hands up with all of this craziness that's happened the last couple of years. But there's not a single person in a position of power right now at the Titans that I have any faith in. And it's going to hurt some people's feelings that I said that. But it is the truth. I have no faith in Amy. I have no faith in the two presidents they have, which, again, who has two presidents? But I have no faith. I have no, what has Chad Brinker done? What is his resume that says, you know what, he should be the president of football operations for this team? He was, I think his title was personnel executive with the Packers for 2 years. And now he's your president of football operations? I have no faith in Rand Carthon, zero. And he had no experience at the GM level. He wasn't an assistant GM. He did not have the experience. And Brian Callahan has no experience as a head coach. So you're saying, hey, give me something good. I got nothing. I got nothing to give you. Because again, when the Titans had their reset in 2016, John Robinson didn't have any experience, but Steve Underwood did. He had 40 years of it. Mike Mularkey, the head coach, had plenty of experience. Did you notice how when Mike Mularkey got the job, with all of his experience, even though they had the second overall pick at quarterback, he didn't design an offense. We're going to throw the ball all over the field. No, we're going to go trade for DeMarco Murray. We're going to draft Jack Conklin. We're going to bring in older coaches. We're going to run the ball. Because he knew that all of that was just ridiculous. Matt LaFleur comes in here, no experience. We're going to throw it up and down the field. And it takes him 14 games to realize, you know what? We should just hand the ball to Derrick Henry. Brian Callahan comes in here. We don't need Derrick Henry anymore. We're fine with that. We're going to throw the ball up and down the field. And they can't throw for 100 yards against the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL. So you're looking for good news. I'm sorry, you've come to the wrong place. Because until the Titans are willing to change, nothing is going to change. It's as simple as that. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We are back to your phones here on the program. Plus, Ian, I got to get on PK. I got to get something he said yesterday. I got to get on. Okay. I got to get on Paul Kaharski.
Be nice.
We will do it. Why?
I'm just saying.
We're keeping it real today. Nice. Nice is what everybody feeling good about themselves. Toxic positivity, sunshine. Nice is what got you in this mess in the first place.
Paul's not on the Titans. It's okay.
Guys could feel good about themselves. Guys could. Nice. Plus, they say do unto others as they would do to you. What do you think Paul would do to me? Although I do love Paul. So there is something there. Nashville's best deal this week is Staley Chicago Italian Dining right here in Nashville. Winner of numerous Best of awards. This is truly one of the best kept secrets in Nashville. Staley Chicago Italian Dining brings amazing Italian food to the South, including original Italian beef sandwiches, Vienna Chicago style hot dogs, and the best gyros south of Chicago. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals now to get half off a $20 gift card while supplies last.
who's mostly to blame here that's not a player? I mean, it's not a one-guy thing. The final say on personnel belongs to Rand Carthon. So if you think it's a personnel problem, then Rand Carthon. I'm not convinced that L'Jarius Sneed is a bad player. He's not a bad player. He's a good player. He's not playing well enough. He's a good player. I don't know about Calvin Ridley. I had some concerns about Calvin Ridley when they brought him in. Ernest Jones is a good player. Ernest Jones is a really good player. Kenneth Murray's been pretty steady. Offensive side of the ball, Tyler Boyd, he's brought in as a bit part. He can't do that much. Offensive line's got holes in it, but they weren't the problem today. But I mean, I don't know how you blame Chad Brinker for what's going on. I think got to blame the coaching for game plans and for guys not getting better right now. But it's on the guys first and foremost. Certainly today, Ridley's performance is on Ridley, and Sneed's performance is on Sneed, and Levis's performance is on Levis.
That was PK yesterday on his live stream after the Titans game was over. And I heard that line from somebody. This is a very good question that somebody asked him, which is, who can we blame other than the players? Because Paul was doing his best at blaming the players, which is fine. I mean, that's totally fine. Whatever. I mean, some of these guys aren't playing well enough. I get it. But again, he's saying, well, I mean, Rand Carthon put the team together, so you got to blame him. The coaching, yeah, you have to blame them. But Ian, did you notice who he said you cannot blame? In that,
was it Brinker?
What was it, a minute and a half diatribe right there from Paul?
Was it Brinker?
He said you can't blame Chad Brinker. Can't blame Chad Brinker in his AI cancer curing model, and you cannot, no. Cannot blame him. Even though Chad Brinker was the assistant general manager last year, so he was part of putting this mess together. Even though Chad Brinker has been promoted to president of football operations before the start of this year. Even though Chad Brinker said on the preseason broadcast when he was up in the booth, which was suspicious in and of itself, but Chad Brinker said that I still block out 4 hours a day to watch tape. 4 hours a day. Do you know how long 4 hours is? When I'm not working, like say I've got a doctor's appointment or something and I end up not doing a show, like 4 hours is a long time. The amount of time I spend on air talking is how long he spends watching tape. But he's not responsible for putting this team together. He's the president. So I heard that and I was like, Paul, come on now. Now, maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe it's not. Paul just had a 45-minute sit down last week at the facility with Chad Brinker about the analytics department. Paul has been breaking some stories like Will Levis's AC joint. And I know that Rand, who almost, he and Paul almost threw down in Minnesota last year. I'm pretty sure that's not who his guy in that building is. So maybe that's a coincidence. Maybe not. I don't know. But he says we cannot blame Chad Brinker. So somebody, Ian, I don't know who, somebody texted him and said, you are a shill for Chad Brinker. And Paul responded.
Friend of mine calling me a shill for Brinker. Blame Rand. He runs personnel. Blame the coaches, but you can't blame Chad Brinker. Well, I think, you can blame Brinker, but we don't know exactly what Brinker does. Brinker oversees the football operation. So Brinker's in charge of that field. That field doesn't have anything to do with what the Titans are doing, winning or losing. Brinker's in charge of analytics. Analytics doesn't have anything to do right now with whether the Titans are winning or losing. Brinker is in charge of all the football stuff except the personnel. So it's kind of an insulated job that prevents you from blame. Isn't it? Am I wrong there? The things that are wrong with this football team right now are how it's playing. And how it's playing is about the players and the coaches. And Brinker is a step removed from the players and the coaches, though he's the boss, I think. I don't know if they direct report. We've never gotten an answer to this. Does Rand report to Brinker or does Rand report to Aim? And does Callahan report to Brinker or Rand, or does he report to Aim? I think he reports to Rand. But then who does Rand report to? It's a little bit scrambled there.
First of all, that's part of the problem. Who reports to who? The Titans have told me that Rand reports to Chad Brinker. Again, the Titans have told me that Rand reports to Brinker. And Brinker says he watches tape. Paul says, well, I mean, Brinker's in charge of analytics. Analytics didn't lose the game yesterday. Did analytics tell you to draft Will Levis? Did the analytic models? Did Sarah Bailey, which I read about in Paul's article about how she's in charge of the college prediction model with their analytics, did those analytics say, you know what we need in the first round with the 11th pick? A guard who can't pass block. So I'm sorry, but all they did was spend all year talking about collaboration. Sunshine, lollipops, rainbows, ponies, and collaboration. They're all responsible. This idea that we can't blame, you can't blame Chad Brinker. And I will tell you right now, this is what I think is going to happen. I think Rand's going to take the blame for this year and get fired at the end of the year. And I think they'll leave Brinker in charge, and it'll be Brinker and Callahan. And that, again, I have no sourcing on this. I just know, Amy, somebody gets fired. Every year things go haywire. This year it's going to be Rand. That's just my gut. But again, I don't, but my belief is just like it was last year. You're going to get rid of Vrabel, get rid of all of them and start over and bring in some experience. Bring in people who know the NFL. And instead, it was promote Chad Brinker, and now we're not allowed to criticize Chad Brinker, even though it was Chad Brinker that went to the Senior Bowl and not Rand. But Chad Brinker, no, he's in charge of the stadium turf. Give me a break. Give me a break. Come on now. Let's go to Mark in Bellevue, who's been waiting patiently. He's up next on the program. Mark, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, Jared, love the show, man. I've just got a couple of Captain Obvious points here. At least they're obvious to me. Apparently it's not obvious to the Titans management, but I think you got two choices. If you can try to win as many games as you can, and that's only going to happen if you play Rudolph at quarterback. You can't win with Will Levis at quarterback. He makes too many mistakes. He's not ready for prime time. And if you are going to play Levis at quarterback and just, let what happens happen, you can't restrict him to just handing the ball off. You got to let him. You got to see what he can do. You got to let him put the ball in the air, and if you lose, you lose. But you can't have it both ways. You can't play conservative, play to win football, and babysit Levis and expect to win and keep everybody healthy. Happy. It's just not going to happen. If it were me, and thank God it's not, if we'd played Rudolph the whole time, we'd probably be 4-1 or 5-0. I would just play Rudolph, hand it off, play old school Mike Vrabel football, win as many games.
You think you're going to be Buffalo and Mason Rudolph at quarterback?
We're not going to get, there's no good quarterbacks that are coming through the first round of the draft that I would take a chance on. And I don't trust our guys to find and draft the right one anyway. So I would just go after Darnold or somebody in free agency. And the rest of the team is actually decent. They're just not good enough to win with Levis at quarterback making all those mistakes.
So you think they can win next week with Mason Rudolph at quarterback at Buffalo?
No, but I think we would have won.
See, and that's the problem, Mark. And Mark, I appreciate your call. What is the point if you can't beat good teams? What is the point? You see what I'm saying? Like, I get what you're saying. You're arguing that, hey, we could have beaten the Indianapolis Colts without Jonathan Taylor, without DeForest Buckner, with Joe Flacco at quarterback, if we had played Mason Rudolph at quarterback. Great. But what would that have gotten you? Like, it'd make you happier today, but you're not competing for the playoffs with Mason Rudolph at quarterback. You're not competing with Buffalo and San Francisco and Kansas City and Baltimore You're not competing with them if you have Mason Rudolph at quarterback. So, again, what does that get you? And so I said this earlier today, and I'm going to keep saying it. This whole what to do with Will Levis for the rest of this season is beneath my pay grade. 2024 is over, guys. It's over. It's over here. It's over in Jacksonville. If Cincinnati had lost last night, it would have been over there. It is over. So I don't care who plays quarterback next week. I don't care who plays quarterback the week after that. I don't care who plays quarterback the rest of the year. Levis gives you the best chance of getting the number 1 pick. It's as simple as that. Rudolph gives you the best chance to not throw something at your television the rest of the year. But is it as good as, like, what good does that do for you? 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. I am going to give Brian Callahan, I am going to give him just one little sliver of compassion's probably not the right word, understanding. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Overall, how similar or different do you feel your play calling has been from what you envisioned initially at this point, as far as like more conservative, less conservative?
Yeah, I mean that was obviously a conservative game plan style. I knew we were going to be able to run the ball well. I thought we did for the most part. Through 3 quarters, that game was about what I thought it would look like, and it was our defense was playing well. We were running the ball. We had 2 different 17-play drives. We scored off a turnover. We were playing the game in a way that I thought was good enough to win through that point, and then obviously didn't get it done. We got to find a way to finish in the fourth quarter. That's sort of been our issue over the course of the season so far in these tight games, is we haven't done enough on offense to go win a game, and you got to score more than 17 points. Your goal is probably always to try to get to at least 24. It's going to put you in pretty good position to win, and we haven't gotten that.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan yesterday, asked about the conservative nature of the game plan. Let me just say this. I have no problem with Brian Callahan running the ball as much as he ran the ball yesterday. Indianapolis had the 31st rushing defense in the NFL. Tony Pollard is the best player on the offense. The offensive line. Did you notice how much yesterday on the TV broadcast, like, watch Skoronski on this play? Skoronski with a great block. Yeah, because he can run block. He can't pass block, but he can run block. Those fat feet, he gets to dictate where they go. He's knocking people over. It's great. They scored a touchdown on a 3rd and 19 running the ball. So when they had the lead in the fourth quarter, they ran it 3 times, including 3rd and 1 out of the shotgun, which I don't really like the whole 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, go 5 yards back and take a snap kind of stuff, but that's the era we live in today. When I see people complaining that we're running the ball too much, Jared, I'm like, you want to throw it? So, again, I didn't like Brian Callahan's game plan of throwing it short. Let's throw screens to Burks to start the game. Didn't like that. Didn't like the fact that Brian Callahan made excuses with the special teams after the game. Didn't like the challenge that he made, where I do think they might have been right, but I didn't like it because I didn't see a replay that made me think that they were going to overturn it, and that timeout did hurt you at the end of the game. And they're supposed to have guys upstairs that are supposed to help the coach with that. I mean, it's part of the analytics piece Paul wrote. The one thing I'm not going to be upset about is the idea of him running the ball with Tony Pollard. If you want to win, and he says they want to win. So the amount of people that were like, I mean, they should have been throwing the ball. Do you know who the quarterback is? Also, they decided to punt on 4th and 7, and everybody says it was crazy that they would have done that. And I would have gone for it, but do you think Will Levis is going to convert 4th and 7? Like, kind of is what it is at that point. Lance is up next here on the Titans Monday. Thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Lance, go ahead.
Hey, Jared, the only reason that Rudolph needs to be the quarterback is that hole they got dug right across the parking lot. They want to fill up seats in that stadium. They got to give their fans hope. And
Mason Rudolph gives you hope?
No hope at all.
What? Mason Rudolph gives you hope?
He gives you hope of winning a game or two. I mean, like you said, a while ago, you could end up being 4-1 right now. Yeah, you're not going to win against Buffalo, but you might luck out and get a wild card game. And people, I mean, look at Tannehill. When they replaced him with Mariota, did you really think that year they make the playoffs?
Mason Rudolph is not Ryan Tannehill.
He's better than
Mason Rudolph is closer to Blaine Gabbert, who was the backup the year before, than he is to Tannehill.
Well, how many games he ended up winning and get them into playoffs last year at the end of the
Lance,
year?
let me ask you this question.
Quarterbacking for you now.
Lance, hush, Lance.
You now,
I'm trying to ask you a question. Lance, let him go. Let him go. I've heard enough. This team has no chance of making the playoffs. I don't care who the quarterback is. The question I was going to ask him was, who are you taking with Mason Rudolph at quarterback, Titans or Bills? I'll take the Bills. Who are you taking, Titans or Lions, with Mason Rudolph at quarterback? I'll take the Lions. Vikings, I'll take Minnesota. Houston, I'll take them twice. That's 5. You've already lost 4 games. Now the best you can do is 8 and 9. That's with Rudolph as the quarterback. And you think you're going to win all the toss-up games with Rudolph as the quarterback? Like, you think you're going to beat Jacksonville twice with Rudolph as the quarterback? You might beat New England. You think you're going to beat Jaden Daniels in Washington with Rudolph as the quarterback? Give me a break. Mason Rudolph is not going to get one person to buy a ticket or a PSL at the new stadium. Not one person. I don't think it's an accident that the Titans sold the most expensive PSLs this summer before they started playing football, because it'd probably be much harder to sell them now. I think the Titans lied to themselves and thought that they could be a good football team this year, but I don't think it was an accident that they sold the most expensive PSLs during the summer before they started playing ball. Robert in Spring Hill says, quite frankly, Jared, I'm not interested in hearing about John Robinson or Mike Vrabel. And the record between that moment and today, all I care about is the future. So my question is, how do you fix it? It's October 14th, 2024. Jared Stillman, you are now the owner. How do you fix it? Boy, that's a loaded question. Because there's a lot of things that have happened up until this point that wouldn't have happened if I was in charge. Like, again, I wanted to clean house after this year. But if I was the owner, I probably wouldn't say much right now. I'd probably let the status quo go, knowing that there's no real benefit to playing Mason Rudolph unless I want to pick 9th this year, which I don't. So, I wouldn't have that big of an issue. But at the end of the year, like, let's say that you're picking number 1 and things are as grim as they are right now, and I'm firing everybody. And I would be hiring probably Rick Spielman would probably be my general manager who I would hire, but I'd interview guys that have done the job before. Like, there would be him, Thomas Dimitrov, Mark Dominic, guys who have done the job before would be in the mix to be the next GM of the Titans. Simple as that. Because I've seen too many rookie mistakes out of the guys that are doing it now. Between Brinker, Carthon, and Callahan. Too many rookie mistakes. Too many, oh no, we think we can fix Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
We think we can fix PT. Yeah, I'm sure you do. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program if you want to weigh in. Coming up next, I am the biggest Titan fan you will meet. Maybe not the biggest. Well, let me say this. You can be as big as me, but you can't be bigger. But I'm not upset about what happened yesterday. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios on a Titans Monday. The Titans embarrassed against the Indianapolis Colts, a team without their starting quarterback, without their best offensive player, Jonathan Taylor, without their best defensive player, DeForest Buckner, the 32nd ranked defense in the league, 31st against the run, 29th going into yesterday against the pass. They lost to him by 3 points. They threw for 95 yards. Oof. And you thought rock bottom was losing to Malik Willis at home, which was bad. This might have been right up there. Now, let me say this. I'm a Titans fan through and through. Some people will argue they're bigger than me. You can't be a bigger Titan fan than I am. There's no way in your day that you think about the Titans or talk about the Titans more than I do. I do it for 4 hours, and this show doesn't produce itself. Number two, I went to the first game. They played Cincinnati. They won by a point. Al Del Greco hit a field goal at the end. They had to get a safety to get back in the game. Steve McNair got hurt. They turned it over to Neil O'Donnell. I remember when Yancey Thigpen made a one-handed catch in that game in Game 2 against Cleveland. I remember on my birthday, I turned 10, Neil O'Donnell went on the road, and they beat Jacksonville, who was a Super Bowl contender. So I know the Titans. I lived the pain of the Mike Munchak era that turned into an even worse Ken Whisenhunt era. I love my football team. And the thing I love about my job is that I get to talk about the teams I care about. And trust me, I don't take it for granted. I remember doing the pregame shows and thinking to myself, man, I'm up here doing the pregame show with Floyd Reese, the great Titans general manager, and Derek Mason, who was on those teams that I just worshiped as a kid. That being said, I'm not upset the Titans lost yesterday. In fact, I'm kind of glad. Generally speaking, the idea of rooting for a loss is a bad thing. And I wasn't sitting there yesterday watching the game saying, please lose, like I did at the end of the 2015 season when they lost to Josh Freeman in Indianapolis so they could secure the number 1 pick. But I wasn't upset about it either. And I'm serious about that. That Indy team yesterday was total and complete garbage. Their coach is a moron. Their defensive coordinator would have been fired after the game if the Titans had won because Jim Irsay takes losing to the Titans personally. And after their defense gave up 380 yards to Trevor Lawrence, I think the 3rd and 19 run up the middle for a touchdown probably was the icing on the cake. I really believe if Indy had lost that game yesterday, Gus Bradley would be out of a job today. That's how bad Indy is right now. And yet I think you needed this. It's almost like a spanking. I'll have a child soon, probably not going to spank my kid. But it's like a spanking when you say, this hurts me more than this hurts you. The Titans need the embarrassment of losing to one of the most beleaguered teams in the league right now because your quarterback couldn't throw for 100 yards against the worst defense in the league. You needed the reality check that just because you bought some random big-name free agents this offseason didn't mean you'd have a winning team. Your high-priced receiver doesn't catch passes, and your high-paid corner turned into a nice burnt piece of toast. I'm glad the Titans didn't eke one out yesterday afternoon against a terrible team that didn't have its best offensive or defensive player to mask the problems that this organization has at the foundation of their group. And I'm glad that no fan who I guess, and there was a lot of this, I'm glad that no Titan fan that was lobotomized by the team this offseason with the Titan Sunshine Pumping Program, I'm glad that they didn't win on Sunday so that we're not sitting here saying, well, hold on now. You're not out of the playoff race. The playoffs are a possibility. because you beat Indy, the 32nd ranked defense in the league, the team that just lost to Jacksonville, the team that, again, was playing a backup quarterback. I don't want to – playoffs? You want to talk about the playoffs? I just hope you win a game. The reality is the Titans have serious problems. And it's not just about the quarterback. Again, I started the show and I said, you can talk about Rudolph and Levis all you want. It doesn't make a damn bit of difference. You're going to lose with Will Levis at quarterback. You're going to lose a little bit less with Mason Rudolph, but you're not going to win. It's reality. The general manager, the president of football operations, the head coach, the Sunshine Group. Remember when Rand said this offseason, they checked off every box they needed to on offense, from every starter to the furthest backup. And yet here we are in week 6 and they don't have a right tackle. The owner decided, no, I know what's best for my organization, and fired her general manager at 7-5 in first place, coming off back-to-back division titles, 3 straight playoff appearances, because that wasn't good enough. I know how the Titans operate. I know that the Titans cannot accept the context of a victory when, again, it doesn't really mean much. They can't accept the context of what that win against Indy would have meant, which is nothing. I don't feel anything good about Indianapolis if I was an Indy fan because they won that game. And quite frankly, losing that game gets you closer to the number 1 overall pick. And I hate to say it, but you could use the number 1 overall pick. Even if there's not a quarterback out there, there are always good players to be had in every single draft. You remember the trade down in 2016? Jack Conklin, Derrick Henry, Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith. Trade downs aren't bad either. So, again, while I love the Titans, I love my football team. And I'm sure after the last 16 months or however long it's been, I'm sure the Titans don't love me right now. And that's okay. But I actually think it was a good thing that they didn't win yesterday. Because if they had won yesterday, Brian Callahan's used this line. He used it after the Miami game where, congratulations, you beat a backup quarterback who couldn't throw. And he used it today when he said that he still has confidence in Will Levis and whatnot, and that he wanted to win because it validates the process. It validates the work they put in. Well, maybe that work they put in isn't worth validation. And a win against Indianapolis would have been an empty calorie victory that would have set the franchise in a direction of trying to pretend they were something that they weren't. Guys, this is the Big Short. The housing market in this case is the Tennessee Titans. The front office, from Amy to Burke Nihill to Chad Brinker, the 2 presidents they have, to Rand Carthon, to Brian Callahan, and all the sunshine pumping, they're the big banks. And I'm one of the guys who looks at the underlying fundamentals of the market and said, this doesn't add up. But Jared, we spent so much money in free agency. Well, you really didn't. You have the 22nd best payroll in the NFL. You're not even in the top half of the league. The reason you could spend money is because you let good players like Derrick Henry go to other teams. The underlying fundamentals, you don't have a right tackle. But Jared, Bill Callahan will fix it. Did he? I also love the fact that every single person's like, yeah, the offensive line wasn't that bad yesterday. Yeah, who's on Indy's defensive front? Quiddy Pay? Won't be that same way the next week against Buffalo on the road. I can promise you that. Tavondre Sweat, had a nice game against Miami. He didn't have a earth-shattering game. You can argue Sebastian Joseph Day had a better game. But Titan fans, after the Miami game where he dominated Aaron Brewer, they said, Tavondre Sweat is the man. He's awesome. He's so good. Again, context. You're playing Aaron Brewer. Yesterday against Quentin Nelson and Ryan Kelly, Tavondre Sweat, no sacks, no quarterback hits, no pressures. Way to go, guys. Again, I'm fine with winning meaningless games if you understand what the value of that win is. What I'm not okay with is the idea of winning games that don't really mean you're good, but then allow you to pretend that you're something you're not. And I know the Titans, and I know the hierarchy that they have, and I know that they would not have been able to process a victory yesterday appropriately. So while I love my football team, I'm not disappointed they lost yesterday. And I'm not going to be disappointed if they're 1-6 after they go to Buffalo and Detroit. Because, again, the foundation has problems. And I don't need a little paint to cover it up. 615-737-1025 or to your phone, 615-737-1025. Plus, the one thing that I wonder if Amy has the same passion she said she had only a couple years ago when things were good. We'll get to that next. 615-737-1025. And your phones here on the program, 615-737-1025. Predators fans, do not miss this Wednesday night Smashville Live at Brew House South in Cool Springs, 6 o'clock. See your Predator star players up close and personal, and the player guests will be Tommy Novak and Yuso Parsonen. That's this Wednesday night at Brew House South in Cool Springs.
As I've said time and time again, I will never shy away from saying that I have extremely high expectations for our football team and really our entire organization. I expect us to build a team that is going to have sustained success and bring Lombardi trophies to the city of Nashville. I am confident that we have put the right pieces in place to bring that goal to life and build a future that Titan fans will be proud of.
That was Amy Adams Strunk when they hired Brian Callahan, saying, I have high expectations. I want Lombardi trophies. And I think we've got the right leaders with Callahan and Rand and Chad and our brand new organization structure. If you're keeping score at home, this is the third year in a row that the Titans have made some major management announcement. 3 years ago, it was the extension of John Robinson and Mike Vrabel. Hand in hand, they're going to lead us for many years to come. Then they didn't. Then it was Carthon and Vrabel. These two are going to lead us to the next era of Titan football. And then they didn't. And now we have this. And every single time Amy Adams Strunk has cited her high expectations. Every single time. So let me say this. I wouldn't fire Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker today. I would be planning to. If I owned the team, I'd be planning to fire them at the end of the year. But when John Robinson got fired in 2022 ahead of the Jacksonville game while sitting at 7-5 and in first place in the AFC South, Amy Adams Strunk used the excuse at the time that she had made up her mind and it wasn't fair to John Robinson to let him continue as general manager of, again, a team that had already been past the trade deadline. There weren't any big roster movement moments, whether it's the free agency period, the draft, whatever. The trade deadline had already passed. But in 2022, Amy Adams Strunk, after being goaded into doing an interview, was sit down with Teresa Walker, because you know she's not going to do a press conference. Amy Adams Strunk said that she had made up her mind. She didn't feel like it was even fair to John to keep him on. Here's what she said.
Honestly, I had made the decision. It was time to move forward. There was no reason to go 6, 7, 8 weeks, however long we remain in the season. It was not fair to John. It was not fair to the team. It just seemed the right thing. It gives us plenty of opportunity now to identify future candidates that we're going to interview, to get to know watch the internal candidates. It's, I'm just not that person that's going to sit on a decision like that.
Okay. She actually was lauded. People said, Amy put her foot down. She had seen enough. Should be noted, John Robinson won 61% of his games. And again, they were 7-5 and in first place. They lost that Jacksonville game that next week. They lost every game the rest of the season, and they didn't make the playoffs because of it. They were 7-5 for that season. They've won 7 games since. So that takes me to, again, Brinker and Carthon. If that's how Amy operates, that I had made up my mind, I had put my foot down, I had made my decision, then why are we not talking about firing Carthon and Brinker? Like, do we think there's still meat on the bone? Do we think this team is improving? Do you think that this team this year is better than the team was last year? Do you think this team is better than they were the day John Robinson got booted out the door? I think you know the answer to that. In my opinion, they've only made the team infinitely worse. I mean, drafting guards with the 11th overall pick, still don't have a right tackle. The quarterback they've picked is awful. Their free agent signings don't do anything, and the head coach is in over his head. So, again, going back to Robinson, if that was our previous standard of 7-5's not good enough because I don't like some of the moves that have been made, so I'm going to fire them, what does it say about this group? Shouldn't that still be our current standard? Again, she gets up there every year and says, I have high expectations. You lost to Malik Willis by double digits at home. Have your expectations been met? If I had told you the day John Robinson got fired, because a lot of people were upset about the Julio trade or the AJ trade or the Isaiah Wilson, Caleb Farley picks, and I wasn't happy about those either. I mean, I was okay with the AJ trade of all things, but the Julio trade I thought was crazy when it happened, and I was the one who was a hater. Again, it was I trust John Robinson more than you. And the same people that say, I trust Bill Callahan more than you. As Dr. Phil would say, how's that working out for you? But again, if I had said to you the day John Robinson got fired, if I had said, hey, 2 years from now, you'll be the worst team in the league and you'll lose at home by double digits to Malik, would you have accepted that standard? Would she have accepted that standard? So again, I'm not saying I'd fire these guys right now. I would fire them at the end of the year. But that's because I think they're snake oil salesmen. But if that was her previous standard and that wasn't good enough, then why are we not talking about firing them now? If anything, it would make more sense to fire them now than it did Robinson when she did, because number one, this team isn't in contention for anything. Number two, there's still a trade deadline to come in 22 days. And if you don't think these guys are up to snuff, then why would you let them run your trade deadline? Again, you said that it wasn't fair to the team or fair to John Robinson. You said it wasn't fair to him to let him finish out the season when there were no more roster moves to be made. So now you're going to say, well, hold on, but it's not fair to these guys. Even though there is still a roster period to address, there is the trade deadline, and there are pieces to be traded. So again, I'm not saying they should fire Carthon and Brinker today, and I wouldn't fire Carthon and Brinker today. But if our standard, and I'm really talking about her standard because that was beneath my standard, to fire John Robinson when they did. I don't care who the general manager is. It could be Attila the Hun. And I wouldn't have fired the general manager unless he had done something where you got to immediately fire somebody and escort him out the building kind of thing. An HR issue. But I'm not firing anybody in that instance. But her standard's different than my standard. If that's her previous standard, why not have the same energy today? Serious question. I'm just saying. 615-737-1025. Adam in Portland. Our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam in Portland is next. Thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead, Adam.
It's because she's not firing him. That's why. That's the standard. Look, dude, you're so incredibly off base today. I don't know. You probably don't want to hear that. But just give me a second here because you like to pull the trigger on this one. If your heart's bad, your organs will start to shut down. Everything will shut down. You get your heart fixed, they're good again. It's not like the organs are bad. It's just the heart's bad. That's Levis. He's the heart, man. He's bad. He's poisoning everybody. I think our team is infinitely better than it was last year. I think we got a horrible quarterback that cannot play. He's lost it. All right. It's the same thing when they made the Marcus switch to Tannehill. Everybody thought Arthur Smith sucks. He's got to get out of town. Corey Davis sucks. Let's not give him any more money. Don't extend John U. Jack Conklin sucks. Let's not give him that 5th year. Why? Because Marcus poisoned everybody, man. He made everybody look bad.
Jack Conklin had 2 ACL tears.
But you're telling me right now that Calvin really forgot how to play football? Are you telling me right now that our line everybody on our line sucks and doesn't know how to play football?
Yes.
No, it's the quarterback.
Yes, the line sucks. I am telling you right now the line sucks.
If I'm telling you right now that I think you're wrong for looking at it like everybody sucks. Do I want the coach fired? Hell yeah. But why? Not because I don't think he's been auditioned very well. I think he needs to be fired because he committed right after that Miami game back to Levis. I hated that. I wanted him fired for that, but not for his ability to coach. I don't think we've seen him coach. I don't think.
But you don't want to fire the guys that picked Levis. You don't want to fire the guys that didn't get a real backup quarterback in here behind Levis. And you don't want to fire the guy who said that he could turn Levis into a star.
I didn't say that. All I'm saying, crazy thing to say, right? He tied himself to him, so fire him. But I'm just saying, dude, like, I think you're putting it like this whole team is way worse. I don't think it is. I think we don't know what it is. That's the whole point. Like, we're all sitting here. We don't know what our team could be without Levis. Rudolph came in and won a game. Why are you so committed to the Bills, dude? I absolutely think Mason Rudolph could beat the Bills. Maybe that would spark the team and they could beat the Bills. If they start Mason Rudolph, I would be willing to bet that they would beat the Bills. They're not that good.
Okay. Thank you for your call, Adam. Anybody that comes on the show and says the offensive line doesn't suck, come on now. Like, I mean, what are we doing here? Like, I really am not sure the offensive line is any good. I mean, I'm not sure the offensive line stinks. Dude, your offensive line's awful. Again, Pro Football Focus wrote after the win against Miami, it's like you would think that they didn't give up a lot of sacks so that it wasn't. The line's terrible. The reason why the line wasn't terrible yesterday is because Indianapolis doesn't have anybody on their defensive line, and the one guy they do have is hurt. That's why. They had a bunch of Scarbini backups in there. That's why. I'm not sure the line's that bad. I'm not sure our team's that bad. I'm not sure. But I think it's just the quarterback. So the guys who picked the quarterback and the guy who, swore up and down all offseason about the quarterback, Brian Callahan had to put his pants back on after every podcast interview that he did for the way he was talking about Will Levis. And you want to put him in charge and say, go find me the next quarterback? Give me a break. Give me a break. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So a lot of you guys are texting in, tweeting in, talk Vandy, talk Vandy, talk Vandy, talk Vandy. Well, let me say this. There is, because I think a lot of people think that I enjoy ripping on the Titans, and that's not true. But there is proof that me telling it like it is, giving the hard truths, keeping it real, apparently actually does help these teams win. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025. It's Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
It's funny, before we came out, AJ Highsmith and I were in, my office, and I'm straightening up my desk because my wife is coming to practice today. So Lord knows I got to have it clean before she comes in. Yeah. And I was looking at the sheet that the offensive staff had broke down in terms of our needs going into the offseason. And, we could, I'll show you guys later, but we literally checked every single box from what we felt like we needed in starters to the furthest backup, and we were able to hit every single one of those. So, and that's what we really set out to do. Really set out to, wasn't necessarily like, hey, we got to flip this roster, but it was like, let's fill these holes and these needs that we have.
That was Rand Carthon in training camp. Boy, they got every need checked. And here we are 6 weeks into the season, and they don't have a right tackle. They don't have a quarterback. They don't have a right tackle. The receivers are all mad about not getting the ball, etc. So there's a bunch of Vanderbilt fans that have texted in today that are saying, talk Vandy, talk Vandy, talk Vandy. And so I'm going to with this, which is, I think sometimes people think that I like ripping on the Titans. I have told you that I am a big Titan fan. I am. I think I can go toe-to-toe with anybody, even the people that have covered this team from day one, about Titans history. And I think I can go toe-to-toe and hold my own. Now, not like the inner workings of what happened, because I wouldn't know any of that before I was in the media, but I'm talking about actual games and things that went down and which year was this, and some of that's because I think I've got pretty good recall. But again, I'm passionate about my team. So I think a lot of people think, which is not true, that I get on the air and I just want to scream about the Titans because I hate the Titans. No, I tell it like it is. And apparently, Ian, I use the word apparently here.
Yes.
Apparently that helped Vandy win a football game on Saturday. I think, right?
I don't know.
So on Friday's program, we did one segment on the Vanderbilt-Kentucky game. And the whole premise of my opinion was, I'm not mad at Vanderbilt for spending the entire week basking in the glory of the Alabama victory, doing every interview, etc., taking advantage of the spotlight. I wasn't upset about it. I understood it. But at the same time, I was worried that they were going to be fat and happy. They were going to get rat poisoned by their victory. I was worried about that. And then on Friday afternoon, I saw Diego Pavia dropped his brand new podcast with the first episode, and I thought, oh, no. If they're doing a podcast. And I talked about how, who cares about the podcast? I'm focused on Kentucky. I want to focus on Kentucky. That's all I want. And I talked about how the Hawk Tua girl turned her 15 minutes into fame into a podcast that apparently people listen to. I don't, but hey, I appreciate the hustle. Hawk Tua girl. I got a message yesterday. Somebody said, I have no idea if you actually said this or not, but one of the coaches on Vanderbilt staff relayed to Diego Pavia that you compared his media tour last week to that of the Hawk Tua girl. He was so pissed when he heard that he went, got his lunch, and sat in the corner all by himself, away from the team, stewing about it. I said, that can't be true. They said, apparently it was. And again, all I did was talk about how, hey, the Hawk Tua girl has a podcast now. And I'll tell you, Vandy did not play on Saturday like they were rat poison from the Alabama game. So I'd like to congratulate myself on what I call reverse rat poisoning Vandy. And kudos, by the way, to Vandy, if this is actually true. Because I bet you, Ian, this is what I think happened. I think the Vandy coaching staff I think they were looking for somebody to say something. Because everything was so positive after they beat Alabama that they were looking for somebody to say something that they could take to Diego Pavia and say, hey, they said this about you.
Humble them.
Because, well, especially him, because I think they know he's a dog. And so it's like, oh, he's the kind of guy who hears something like that and it makes him play better. Whereas maybe Will Levis hears something like that and he shrinks up a little bit. And so, again, all I did was just say, hey, the Hawk Tua girl's got a podcast. She can get anybody on it now. But I don't care about that. Just like I don't care about Diego Pavia's podcast. And apparently, Diego Pavia was not happy and took it out on the Kentucky Wildcats. And for that, I salute Vandy and I salute Diego Pavia. And maybe if the Titans would listen every now and then, instead of getting back, Jared Stillman hates us, you can do that. Or you can say, you know what? Jared Stillman's been really adamant, very vocal about a right tackle situation. Like, maybe we should get one. That's all I'm saying. That's it. And you get two choices in life when something's not going your way or you hear something you don't like or something. You have two choices, as Chris Sanders would say. What are they?
That's right. You can get better or get bitter.
And Vanderbilt gets better. I think the Titans just get bitter. They get mad at me. By the way, it should be noted, I said on the six-pack picks, I said I would be happy to lose on Vandy and Oregon. I was driving back from the Jelly Roll concert in Louisville Saturday night, excuse me. Jelly Roll, by the way, puts on a freaking killer show. And every seat in the stadium was full. But so I was driving back from the Jelly Roll show, was listening to the Vandy game on the radio, it's a Kentucky radio call. And I mean, between that and watching the Oregon game on my phone, I was so happy to have picked both games incorrectly. I was thrilled beyond measure. I'm happy for Vanderbilt. Let's go back to your phones. Vincent's in California is up next here on our program. Vincent, thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. What's that? Vincent's up next. Did I say in California?
You did, but that's okay.
Vincent up next on Brian Callahan. I'm sorry, I can't read today. Vincent, go ahead.
All right. So first off, thanks for bringing the receipts. That we need the receipts in this going forward because the excuse, we've got to run them out of excuses. So good. Thank you for bringing the receipts, doing your job. We love you out here. But anyway, these fans, I just cannot understand. Am I watching the same game that they are? Play wild card? I mean, what are they? No, I mean, all right. So, dude from Portland calls and says about the quarterback, he's poison killing the team. No, you change the quarterback. Is that going to make Ridley go up and fight for a 50-50 ball more? No, it's not. That's one of the biggest things right now with the receivers. They won't battle for a 50-50 ball. But anyways, the reason I called is this. I don't think Callahan survives this either. I don't think he survives this because they're not getting better. All he's done is change to a running screen offense. That's not what got him the job. Just like Heupel, what he's doing in Knoxville right now, the style of offense he's running, that's not what hired him. It was air raid, big chunks. So I don't see him surviving this either. And I'll hang up and see what you have to say. Thank you.
So I appreciate your call. The reason why I think if Brian Callahan doesn't make it throughout the year, the reason I think he's not going to make it after the year is because I think the Titans are going to go in an organization directional shift. That the Titans are going to say, okay, we tried the Carthon thing. We tried to make it better by bringing in Brinker to babysit. We tried by getting him as coach. We put in his quarterback. We spent money in the free agent market. And we went from, man, we were a team that thought that we could compete to we suck. And we've seen enough of it. And so it is what it is. So we're going to go get somebody that has experience in here that's not going to get up there and say the ball didn't bounce their way. We're going to get a general manager in here who knows football and is not about his own hat brand. That's what, and I can see the Titans doing that and saying, hey, what we don't want to do is we don't want to do what we did last time where we had a head coach who was not hired by this general manager and they didn't get along. And so we're going to let the new GM we hire pick his coach. If it's not that, then I think Brian Callahan stays no matter what because he's nice. And again, they want collaboration. They value collaboration and everybody feeling good about themselves and using buzzwords like analytics. They like that more than they like competence. Did they not know that they didn't have a right tackle? I did. You did. Some of you didn't. Some of you were like, Bill Callahan. Yeah, okay. Jim is up next on Vandy. Thank you for calling, Jim. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
Jared, I'm glad that after 3 hours of this show, we are finally discussing the best football team in the state of Tennessee, and that would be the Vanderbilt Commodores. Better than the Titans, better than the Vols, better than the Tigers over in Memphis. Jared,
you need to stop talking that trash about the Vols unless you think you're actually going to beat them.
Oh, we are going to drag them across the field at First Bank Stadium on Dudley Field, Jared. You know the vibes. And Jared, game respect game. I understand and I acknowledge you for trying to spin zone, that you were right and reverse rat poisoned Vandy and Diego Pavia. But you just got to admit that you were wrong.
I wasn't trying to do that, by the way. It just happened.
Oh, no, Jared. It's okay. Spin zone. Hey, game recognized game here, Jared. I know.
I was not trying to say something that would motivate Diego Pavia. I was saying what I thought, and apparently,
no. And you were wrong. You're spin zoning it to be like you did them a favor. You're not familiar with this Vandy team. You're not familiar with Diego Pavia. The boys got some dogs on the team. This is a different Vandy team.
I never said
Diego
they didn't have
Pavia
dogs
for Heisman. It was always the Doors. It was always Clarkley. It was always Vanderbilt.
You know what? Maybe you're right. Thank you for your call, Jim. Maybe you're right. Maybe you are. I don't know. Maybe they'll beat UT. I would pick UT today, but by the way, I thought it was a disgraceful performance by Tennessee. And I thought it was disgraceful that Billy Napier didn't go for 2. But again, I mean, I'm just telling you, all I know is what I was told was that, again, a coach on the staff went to Pavia and said, hey, they compared you to the Hawk Tua girl on the radio. And Pavia went, stewed about it by himself in the corner and then went out there and played great. Maybe Pavia plays great no matter what. I don't know. I just tell you what I was told. That being said, it wasn't like my segment on Friday was a segment to motivate the boys. It wasn't that. I said it because I thought it. I was scared to death. Vanderbilt was going to overlook Kentucky. And by the way, it was great listening to the Kentucky radio broadcast. Oh, my God, they were so butthurt. Like, anytime Vandy would get a first down, I was like, gosh, every time they need 7 yards, they get 8. I mean, just every time. We are just not playing with the discipline that we need to. It was quite enjoyable. 615-737-1025 here on the program. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 again.
This is a defense. They get Kenny Moore back, so he's out there, but a defense that has given up big passing numbers to wide receivers outside the numbers this season.
Can Levis and company take advantage of some of that? Levis here, going to take a shot, throws into a crowd, and it is picked. Julian Blackmon with a snatch for Indianapolis. Levis just throwing it up, and Blackmon making the easy pick. Well, Levis, watch Levis at the top of his drop and how long he's staring right here. And then now he's looking here, but now look how long he pats it. He pats it and he pats it and he pats it. That's an eternity. So Blackmon playing center field, he knows as soon as Levis looks that way, if he doesn't launch it and get rid of it, he gives Blackmon too much time to get a head start and break on that pass. A critical error, trying to get the ball outside, but he gave him way too much.
That was the Will Levis interception. So I don't know if you guys remember this, but during training camp, the Will Levis perfume de mayonnaise came out. And everybody thought, this is so funny. And I said, I don't like it. I said, why do this to yourself? I said, I almost feel like a parent. Like, why set yourself up for this? Oh, Jared, just have fun. Oh, Jared, he needs to take advantage of his marketing. Oh, Jared, not so funny now, is it? And I said, if you don't play well, people are going to hold this over your head. Today on the most popular show on ESPN, Stephen A. Smith, let it fly.
You must be new to the Will Levis party, because if you know anything about this party, they're not very good.
How the hell he get these commercials then, man? I mean, see, that's the problem with America.
He's got
that's the
buds
problem
like
with
Dan
America
Orlovsky.
right there. Right there's the problem with America. We got to stop rewarding mediocrity. You understand what I'm trying to say? You should be able to accomplish it. How you gonna get a mayonnaise commercial? You understand? And you looking like, and you playing like that? I mean, come on.
I mean, Stephen A. Smith's just saying, like, we got to make fun of him on this one. I try to tell you. Cam is up next on Amy Adams Strunk. Thank you for calling. Go ahead, Cam.
Yo, Jerry, what's up, man? Hey, so all my buddies and all my other fans, friends, and everything, they all tell me the same thing. So I don't want you to tell me the same thing. I want you to think of something different to tell me when I ask you this question, okay? Between Malarkey and Vrabel and now the Callahan years and all this stuff, there's one common thread, and it's Amy Adams Strunk. She's a terrible owner. How do we get rid of her?
I mean, I don't think you can.
I knew you were going to say that. It's Steve Jobs. How did they do that?
I mean, I hate to say it. Cam, thank you for your call. I hate to say it, but like, you know, Jed York, when they went through the Harbaugh thing, and then they had Jim Tom Sula for a year, and then they had Chip Kelly for a year, and they fired him, and they hired Kyle Shanahan. Jed York said, hate to say it, but owners don't get fired. I mean, if owners could get fired, you think you have it bad. You think the New York Knicks would have fired Jim Dolan by now? So, I mean, that's not going to change. And again, I've said this. I've seen for a 5-year period Amy Adams Strunk be a good owner. So I know she can do it, but she ain't doing it now. The Commodore Hour. Congrats to them. The Commodore Hour's next. Stillman and Company will see everybody live from Bridgestone Arena tomorrow at 2.